Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is the Apostate Prophet. I hope you're having a fantastic day. I'm very happy to be here on this Monday morning. Is it Monday? I think it's Monday. Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm happy to be here on this Monday morning. Hope everyone is having a great morning, a great day, a great evening, wherever you are. I'm here today with a very special guest. We've been wanting to go live for a while now. I wanted to have you live on for a while. I was very interested. But I have here with me Milahan. How are you, Milahan?
Very, very good. How are you?
Good, thank you. Thank you so much. Some are familiar with you. Some who are familiar with my content are familiar with you. You kind of, we had a little bit of a back and forth. We had certain, you were part of certain conflicts that I was engaged in and all that. But for all those who don't know you, for all those who don't know you well enough, how about you can summarize and introduce yourself a little bit?
Well, I have a YouTube channel where I dig into history. I do funny videos of like bugs. Well, not necessarily funny, but they're funny to me. And philosophy books. I read hadiths. I even read some Christian texts. So I just overall nerdy bibliophile channel. I also have some like gaming videos up. So I'm pretty mixed in like what I do on YouTube, but I am a American convert, revert. I am Italian and part Cherokee, and I support polygamy, and I'm really into fitness, and I'm more on the right wing in American politics, so I'm kind of conservative in that way. Yeah,
that is quite interesting.
yeah.
I saw your channel a while
Conservative.
back. a while back. I think even maybe it was before you officially converted. I saw your videos where you were talking about Islam, and you weren't wearing the hijab and all that yet. So it was kind of, the journey was kind of public, right? You were publicly interested in Islam and eventually ended up converting to Islam and declaring that publicly as well. How did that happen? How did that whole interest in Islam arise?
It's quite, there's so many branches to it, but I'll try to make it as succinct as possible. So essentially, Habib, the MMA fighter from Dagestan, was a huge part of it, and Mufti Menk as well. But the niche part of, I also studied for a year before I decided to join Islam. I know that in Speaker's Corner, people say their Shahada right then and there. They don't know anything about the religion. I was quite the opposite. I studied, I finished the Quran, I learned Hadith and Tafsir, but a huge part of it was, it might sound kind of odd when I go around describing it, but I'll try to conceptualize it the best way I can. Because there's a theological aspect and also a personal aspect. So the personal aspect was the behavior and discipline of Habib as a Muslim fighter when he fought Conor McGregor. The reason being is because as an American, we're pretty rowdy. The traditional rugged, right-wing, bull riding, kind of loudmouth, and I had that kind of ego. But when I had seen Habib completely smash somebody and thinking Allah and being totally composed in this sort of Islamic masculinity and righteousness, it really inspired me and caught my attention. Now I'm around MMA fighters all the time. I know that there's stoic men in any branch, but this one in particular caught my focus in a way that I couldn't ignore. Let's put it that way. I have veterans in my family. I wanted to join the Marines, so I'm very familiar with like strength in your character, but his aspect really inspired me to start digging in more. And so that's when I started to pick up, learning about it, diving deep into it. So he kind of inspired me to begin studying. And then I watched videos of
If I may,
uh-huh.
if I may
Yeah.
interrupt there for a second, couldn't it be that that is more about the individual than about the culture or the religion? Because I mean, if you ask me, I am, I was born in Germany and grew up there. I lived in
Yeah.
Turkey for a while. I visited several other countries. I'm now in America. What I see is that although there is an emphasis on humility and all that in Muslim culture, I would definitely say that between my experiences in Western culture and in the Muslim culture, in the West there is much more of a kind attitude toward others, especially toward kids, for example, and all that. Whereas in Muslim culture, there people are much more ready to get into conflict, to fight, to become foul-mouthed, and all that. I mean, that would be my observation. You know, and
Interesting.
the observation of many other people. I grew up in Germany, and growing up around Turkish immigrants or Muslim immigrants or descendants of immigrants, it is kind of like it is an open secret, or it is very much publicly known that people of my background are much more arrogant, dehumanizing, much more ready to get into conflicts and all that in public, whereas the other side, the Western people, are much more reserved and much kinder. That would be my observation, for example. So couldn't it be that this was more about the individual than about the culture and the religion?
Mm, yes and no, because he's part of it personally. But when I read in Bukhari and the other Hadith volumes, the Book of Jihad, you begin to see the mannerisms of a very strong, masculine, righteous jihadi, and then you see those aspects of character that Islam gives you as a Muslim, and then you see them apparent very clearly in Habib, and that is what got my focus, because I believe Allah gives you signs and ways in which He'll bring you to the path, right? So each person has something that held their focus that brought them to the faith, right? In some people like you, they have something that causes them to leave it.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, this is what caused me to hold still and focus and see like a new avenue of where strength can come from, in a way
Okay.
in which it really just seemed like this is something real there. It's hard to describe if you're not really into this type of warrior aspect, but for people who have a very just like ruggish background, where it's kind of like a little bit about violence or strength or combat, he is like a walking model of the good mannerisms that I believe you get when you try to enact, chapter 5 of those hadiths, right? So it's like he reminds me, and then when you study the companions, you're like, hey, how they acted during times of war. There's a militaristic aspect, right? And I'm sure you're familiar with that because you spent time with communism. So that is something that got my attention. So that's how I began on my journey. Then later it goes into the theological aspects, but I'm trying to word it in a way that's like, because there's other aspects to it too, but I can't deny that he was somebody who got me to pause.
What do
And
you think about the whole Dawa scene? I mean, when we talk about kindness and humility and treating each other with respect and all that, I don't want to, or you don't have to respond to this. You don't have to answer this. I don't want to put you on the spot here about that. But I'm sure you are familiar with the attitudes toward each other, the back and forth, the diplomacy that is taking place online between people like me, critics of Islam, and Muslim apologists, well-known ones. I think people can see that there is a contrast there in terms of how I generally behave and how they generally behave. Would you say that the attitude that comes from the Dawa side is more in alignment with ideas of kindness and goodness and respect and all that, or?
um I've been attacked more by other Muslims than any other group, so I wouldn't call the Dawah scene loving and kind. I would say that you're gonna get the kindness from the sheikhs on Scholarly Subtitles channel. Those clerics, those are like the old man, kind of wise, and Imran Hussein even. Those are the types that you're gonna get the kindness from. But the younger reverts, especially the red pill ones, I don't think you're gonna get kindness from them. They have a different aspect. They have a different angle. Their crowd is usually men in their 20s, so they have a different type of energetic, kind of poppy vibe to them. I don't know. There's a lot of smiling, but a lot of deception. So it depends.
The thing
They
that
don't
I
like
see
me
is,
very much, so I wouldn't say that
yeah.
there's too much infighting.
The
So
thing
if
is,
they're not going to be
what
kind
I
to
see
each
is,
other, they wouldn't be kind to you. Is my point.
yeah, yeah. What I see is, there is a pattern in behavior, in a certain way of behaving among
Yeah.
people in the Dawa scene, for example. I mean, you see it all the time. Like, you have probably witnessed all the attacks that I have had so far. Ironically, people then people say that people call that stooping down to my level, which I find very ironic because I never talk the way these people generally talk to me, for example. But there is a pattern in behavior, in personal abuse, that goes to very great lengths, and a complete absence of kindness, an absence of compassion, an emphasis on dehumanizing the other side, on saying whatever comes to mind to the other side, being deceptive, and so on. And when you have this pattern of behavior among these people, it is hard for me to separate that from that certain ideology which they together defend. It is, to me, quite obvious that if this group, the Muslim apologists, behave in a certain way all the time, and there is almost no exception to that rule, then it probably has something to do with the ideology that holds them together. Wouldn't you? Would you disagree with that?
There's cliques most definitely online of how they want to go about handling people who criticize Islam. I would definitely say that there's a bit more anger, but at the same time, I would say that they're very passionate. So when you love something, heat comes out. I get that way too, and I've been trying to work on it. It's hard to have your patience, but Islam does tell us to have patience. And it's hard because even me, I've been rude, you know, to Derek from Myth Vision, and then you look back and you're like, did I have to do that? It's your passion can kind of overwhelm you where you
I
want
understand.
complete domination. So it's hard sometimes. That's why I was trying to say how Conor McGregor, I had an attitude like that, and then when I saw Habib, I realized you can smash somebody without having the kind of rodeo mouth.
Mm.
That's kind of like how I tie it back into that, and I've had to work on that. And the religion has definitely changed me to be better at that. But it does feel good when you're mean to your enemies. So if they see you as an enemy, which I'm sure they do, um, then they're going to take joy and get dopamines from trying to humiliate you. So it makes sense in terms of how enemies treat enemies, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah. I mean,
yeah,
in all honesty, I see that, and I say it too. I have said it before. I know that these people think they are doing the right thing when they, attack the so-called enemies of Islam, when they call people enemies of Islam, when they, engage in very terrible behavior. I think, I mean, these people think they are doing the right thing, and I cannot hate them for that because they really genuinely think this is what they are supposed to do, or this is what. They think they are doing this for a good reason because they feel passionate about their own religion. The issue is, that is exactly the problem. It is not the people. It is the way of thinking, the way of believing, the ideology that makes them act and think in a certain way, which I find very problematic. And I tie that to Islam. But we can get back to that. You were talking about your conversion and about theology. How did that proceed?
well, for me, one thing in which I really liked about the theology was the pure form of Islamic monotheism, and then the regulations, obviously, that I have learned in the Hadith, and the way in which polygamy, righteous masculinity, and nurturingness of like being a mother and large families. there's like this whole aspect of like there's a pureness to it. I don't know how to explain it. I'm trying to get better at explaining it, but the akida of belief in the angels, belief in the books, that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is the seal of the messengers. I really agree with that. After studying so many different religious texts, I really do like the way how, Allah permits force. I do enjoy that. I do think that a pacifist hippie religion can never rule because in order to fight evil, you need strength. So for me, the theology of be ever steadfast, ever forward, be firm against your enemies, turn to Allah alone, don't commit shirk. These are things that actually, when I reflect upon them, I get a sense of energy. I don't really know how to explain it very well, but the prayers, everything, it's just so cyclical. And it
Mhm.
definitely makes me feel strengthened whenever I've been tested or tried. Turning just to Allah alone, without any association of partners, no mediums, no crystals, no nothing, just directly, it does something to your consciousness that I feel it's really tight. I hope I'm explaining that well.
No, I understand that, and I understand the emotion and the passion behind it. You may be familiar with that. I myself was very religious at a point. I had a different understanding of theology. I had more of a mystical understanding of it due to my background in Islam. But I did agree, and I felt very overwhelmed by the worship and by believing in Islam and following its rules and justifying and rationalizing them and being as devout as possible that as I could be. The issue is that really enough to believe? So you could we have certain layers here. You might say Islam is functional. It works. That's what you could say. It seems to work. It seems to agree with my expectations of society and humanity and personality and all that. And you could say it feels good. It's like you devote yourself to it and you feel like you are doing something that is the original purpose of yourself. But then, and you could say the monotheism aspect and the theological aspect seems to make sense to you. But is that really enough? Even if all these three reasons were justifiable, were enough to justify your desire to believe, is that really enough? Were you at a point where you knew that this religion is absolutely true and you know that it is true and there are no possible objections to it? Did you ever come to such a
Yes,
stage?
yes. I've nearly died 4 times, and I've been around a lot of occultists. I know you don't. I know you that you focus a lot on Islam, but I've been around people who are really, might I say, actually evil people. And when you get to see pure darkness, pure evil, people who really believe in like their relationship with the devil, and when you get to see certain things happen that are totally dark, I've gotten to see more of the evil in the world than the divinity type of happy bubbly feeling. So when I see evil, I feel like I turn to Allah so that I can get through that evil. And being shot at, facing death, suffering, whenever I see these things and go through these things, to me, this is something that when I am afraid, just the internal mechanism in my chest that links my consciousness to Allah, this is something that I let go, where I say, okay, I'm going to die, I'm going to go. So for me, yes, when I turn to just God, I don't look for a special stone or hang a certain picture or have to light a certain candle or anything like that. It's wherever I go, I ask for protection. And when you've seen evil and you've been around evil and had certain experiences where you felt like there is this sort of evil entity in the room, I can't deny that. And even with the example of like Nur, where you get that light on your face, I've had
Mhm.
that yellow glow in my face after reading the Quran. And when I went to get that explained by a doctor or something, it was really interesting how they still couldn't explain it, but I was like, it was real and I saw it. And I don't really know how to put it all into focus because there's so many different angles, but the best I can say is that when you've nearly died 4 times, you're around death and decay, you see evil, I know that the opposite is true.
Can you define the evil and the darkness that you are talking about?
Well, satanic occultists, Masons, people who believe that, through. Well, I don't want to get your video taken down on YouTube, but people who believe in doing very, very dark things, people who really, fetishize harming children, doing bad deeds to children, people who enjoy doing bad deeds to men, women who are perfectly fine with trying to channel dark arts in order to keep their beauty. Things like this is when you look in their eyes, there's something different there. And it's hard for
But
people who haven't been around that. I understand.
I understand, but how does Islam counter that? And how does turning toward Islam counter that? Couldn't you find the same refuge without Islam, for example? Why exactly
No,
Islam?
because the restrictions that come from the Sharia prevent you from that. So, for example, the modesty, the intoxicants, the don't associate partners with Allah, right? Don't commit shirk. These actions, this framework prevents you from getting around those people. It prevents you from even letting them have an opportunity to do anything to you, and your values are not their values, so they can't bait you and tempt you as easily if you stay within the bounds that have been laid down. And
Okay,
if
but that
you're
is not exclusive to Islam. I mean, you could do that without Islam. There are other systems that implement that without Islam. Islam is not the only way to do this. And don't get me wrong, but I'm really trying to push it here. It's just
yeah,
even if Islam did get certain things right, in terms of pushing out the corruption and freeing you from evil or darkness or whatever it is, even if it did get certain things right, so do many other systems. Does it really necessarily make Islam right in whatever it preaches and whatever it says and in its theology?
well, Islam goes farther than the others. Catholics can still drink wine. Christians can still drink beer. They don't have to have the essence of modesty. They did in certain aspects, but not as much as the faith of Islam. And I wouldn't say Buddhists do it the same because they have their own way. So they have their own rituals and their own dogma, their own rites, their own framework. But with all my study and with actually practicing, I see that Islam really provides a strong chain for my personality that I have to have because I'm so bullheaded. I'm very forward. I'm very strong. And the concept of fear Allah and trust Allah alone, that comes in. And as I mentioned, the militaristic aspect helps you to be more brave against truly evil things and to lower your gaze and to avoid those types of people. I mean, those
Do you,
occultists have infiltrated much of Christianity, so I wouldn't say Christians have done a very good job, you know?
I mean, you could argue that if you look at the Muslim world, Islam hasn't worked very well for Muslim society. The traditionalists and revivalists would argue that Islam has been down for centuries now. So that would not be exclusive to Christianity. But
Wouldn't that be because of like foreign policy though?
for many reasons, I would say the Ottoman Empire, for example, very much was responsible for screwing up Islam and turning it into something that it was not, and thereby leading to its downfall because it became all about power and all about the throne of the Ottoman empires, and it brought its downfall very much. Maybe, of course, together with foreign policy, but that is just part of human nature. It happens. But obviously, what I'm trying to get at is Islam didn't work either. What you have today is a very corrupt, a very divided, scattered Islam that will never, ever come together again and be established as a proper united force that can fix the problems of the world. The problems of the
I
world
think
will
the
still be there.
distinction comes in though is that the rules are there in the hadith, in the Quran. We just have to follow them. And the raw rules are something that help me to avoid those situations. The behaviors that are compulsory upon me, the way I schedule my life around my prayers, I don't have time to engage in the naughtiness. I have to go outside that realm, you know? It's
Okay.
very different than Christians who pray different times and they have their, even the Jewish people, they have different schedules, right? They have the Sabbath. So it's different. So for me, because I have such a kind of a goat headed personality, the rules that are always around, if, that's what helps keep me like reins on a horse, something that really holds me back, because so much freedom that you're like, I have to kind of have some type of guideposts. So sure, I'm
The issue
sure that
is
Muslims are failing, but for me, I'm saying the text itself, that helps me. But with Christians, they've allowed too much, certain occultists actually within their orders, in their societies.
it
So
seems to me
that's the
that you have this
differentiation.
dichotomy, this dualism between that evil which you saw or experienced in occultists and other things, and then something that must be a solution to that. And that, in my opinion, would be a very narrow way to view the world, because that is, I mean, those two options are not the only things that are there. For example, me, I am an ex-Muslim. I am an atheist. I know many other people who are ex-Muslims and who are atheists, who are agnostics, who are people of all kinds of different backgrounds. I lived among Muslims, and I have to say, from my experience, my life has been quite pure. If you even look at it from the standards of these, religious perspectives, I haven't been cruel. I haven't done horrible things. I haven't massacred people. I haven't eaten, human offspring and all that. I haven't sexually abused and assaulted people. I didn't do any of these things. I didn't do certain things to animals. And I didn't need Islam for that in order to not do those things. On the contrary, I would say that I know of many Muslims who did do very horrible things, despite the fact that they follow Islam and despite the fact that they are even religious. So in the end, it wasn't Islam wasn't necessary to keep me from doing things that you would consider evil. Just like that, we have many countries, many societies in the world that are free from Islam, but in which crime rates are extremely low, in which certain horrible things do not happen, and so on. So it looks to me like Islam is not necessary. On the contrary, Islam is not really part of the solution here.
I think you can still have goodness in the world through different, structures and economic systems and taxations, different jurisdictions, no doubt about it. But I would argue that there are more reasons to things not working out than we tend to realize. Different factions causing political strife, greed, evil in general. Things are going to fail. Every empire rises and falls. It's cyclical. Not everyone gets to be hegemonic forever. America will fall. Britain will fall. Someone else will rise up. It's just how things go since, Tenochtitlan in Mexico, the Incas. Everybody has a time where they go, and that's how we see it. I mean, Allah allows empires to rise and fall. So if Allah's allowed Muslims to be weak for now, that's what He's decreed, and we have to work on it. And the best way I can do is to lead by example. So,
Okay, as far as I
yeah.
understand, what leads you to the idea that Islam is true is that it works, or that there is some functionalism to it, some functionality to it, that it serves a certain purpose. Is that, am I
There's
wrong in
many,
saying
many
this?
more layers. The way in which men behave, the way in which it actually makes me feel like I have a purpose. I'm less afraid of death. The fact that I had strived to compete to do good deeds, to be just totally solid and firm within my feet and my soul, to really structure my life heavily with the way I speak, the way I carry myself. There's a whole aspect of like the reformation that comes inside once you adopt the principles, once you apply the aqidah, once you contemplate on the tawheed of Allah, and when you stop committing shirk, when you follow the what you can do and what you can't do. This has really helped me. I mean, Islam has helped me break my, like, I used to have a pornography addiction. Islam helped me get rid of that. I used to be way more quick to be violent, to punch someone in the face, to hurt them. Now it's just like, I just let them talk. Now I understand these reforms can come from all different aspects, but what I'm saying is that I truly believe that when I die, I'll stand before Allah and be like, hey, this is what I did.
How do you
And
know that?
I guess it would be because I've been so close to death to where I've wanted to die. And I kind of just look at the sky, and I do a lot of self reflection a lot every day. more than most people. And I think only the reason why I'm here is to try to establish Tawheed, do good deeds, take care of my child, but I'm ready to go. And I think your iman is strong when you're excited to meet Allah.
Okay,
You
here's the
know?
thing. When I go outside, sometimes on a very nice day, I go for a walk. Everything is quiet. I look up to the sky. I look at the trees, and I get this feeling of this overwhelming feeling of humility. Like
Yeah,
I am a very small little dot here. It doesn't. I don't really matter. There's something greater. Well, there is something
yeah.
greater. It's the earth is greater than me. The humanity in general is greater than me, and so on. This doesn't necessarily mean that this doesn't necessarily lead to the conclusion that Islam is true. However, it could be
Hmm.
that I am simply escaping to the focus of on myself and my responsibilities and focusing on something else outside of me, which in return gives me peace because I'm taking a break from all the hassle and all the stress and whatever it is that we have in the world. I'm focusing on something besides myself. I'm escaping my own life for a brief moment. The same thing happens during meditation. The same thing happens in prayers and states of meditation in all kinds of different beliefs and religions. It's hard to conclude that this would lead you to concluding that Islam is true. I mean, you just told me about certain things, why you think Islam is true, and I kind of made little notes of them. You talked about the fear of death, good deeds, the behavior of men, and sexual behaviors, behavior in general, rules, and all that. These are all functional things again. So what I see is that it all boils down to it works or it is good. I just don't see how you would come to the conclusion that Islam specifically is true.
Is there another angle you want to go deeper? Because I can definitely answer that. Like maybe
I
you
mean,
can lead to where what you're trying to ask.
you could. Here's the thing. Here's my point.
Yeah.
You could say there is a greater power, and that could be anything. That could be a God who doesn't care about us. It could be the Christian God. It could be something else. It could be a God that is experimenting. It could be no God at all, but just your perception, and so on. So, feelings or the functionalism is not necessarily, I would say, is not even remotely reason enough to conclude that Islam is true. How do you conclude theologically that Islam is true?
So, well, when I read the Quran and I contemplate on it and I look at it and I really reflect upon what is the message here, what am I trying to get through it, and I apply it, you can extract a lot of different types of wisdom from it that will work if you adhere to it. If you look at the hadiths, the amount of knowledge I gain from them, even the weak ones, is still very powerful to the point where it reforms your behavior and your knowledge of the religion becomes more encompassing. And when you get around the scholars, the ones who are very melon wise, you begin to see a different type of energy, the way in which Islam reforms people into a cohesive unit and allows them to recognize their purpose on earth. So it has helped me theologically in the terms of who is the devil? Well, Iblis is someone who wants something, a jinn, who wants to destroy us. How does that happen? Has a long resume of creating vice, malice, wedges between families, certain aspects of that theologically of what is evil in Islam and what is good in Islam, what are the ethics. These are things I value. So the strength part, I know you have a problem with, I understand. But for me, I do admire now the authoritarian streak within it.
Okay, but do you need Islam for that?
I would think,
Here's an
yeah,
example. I meditate, for example, or I meditate with somebody else, and when I sit down and confine myself to that state, and take my mind off things, and then maybe come to focusing on all the stuff that I think should be improved in my life, then I come to certain conclusions. That seem to me quite self-evident in the moment because something is causing suffering in my life and I can prevent that by going on better about it in a different way. Maybe I should focus on that. I should calm down. I should breathe and so on. And I feel this deep purpose inside me, I feel this deep fulfillment and connection to others who are there with me, and appreciate that. And I wish others could follow the same thing. So we could say that I am basically describing the same feeling that you are describing.
I think you enter into this sphere, whereas I feel like I'm talking to Allah, right?
How
When
do
I
you know
used to
that?
meditate in Buddhism, I felt like you're entering into this whole atmosphere of like nirvana. You're connecting, you're clearing your mind. The guided meditation, when I used to do it, was a different type of sphere for your consciousness and what came into your mind. Whereas I feel like I'm directly not in front of God, but right there, and I'm saying words to Allah. Whereas when I'm meditating, they're not necessarily being focused to a being of beings in a sense. So the
Would you say
distinction
that
there is a little less potent when I used to meditate on my own amongst, because in California there's a big yoga crowd, big meditation crowd, lots of Buddhists. So it's quite different than when I could be alone and I feel like I'm talking directly to Allah. And it just has a more tightrope feeling that it's a little bit different to
Would you say
explain.
that you believe that Islam is true, or would you say that you know that Islam is true?
Well, I would die for it, so it must means I know and believe it. It's both. If someone's going to behead me and say, give up Islam or I'm going to chop your head off, and I'd be like, I guess I'm going to have my head chopped off.
But you
So I guess that's
could
how
still
you
agree to it,
describe it.
even if you believe it. I mean, you could still die for it, even if you believe it. You just have to be passionate about it. So, would you say? I mean, knowing and believing, there is a difference, in my opinion. If you know that something is true, then you would have to be able to demonstrate that it is indeed true. What I see you do so far is you present certain reasons, certain premises, which lead you to the final thought, okay, this makes sense, this works, or this, there is some connection or something. And then we are left to conclude that this may explain the idea that Islam is true. But do you know that Islam is true?
Well, I think the honest way you would put it, we'll all see when we die, right? We'll all see
Okay.
when we die. And for me, I can say, I know and believe it because Allah has revealed science to me and allowed me to come into the fold. And when I contemplate upon all the prophets, how they suffered, on the lessons in the ayats, what I get from it, this is something where you're like, I'm connected to it. I'm within the fold, and I don't need anyone but Allah. So that's how I feel. So it would be hard for me to tell you, I know, and then I'm like going to do something, But if someone says, "Do you know?" I'd be like, "Here we go." Take off my
Well,
head, right? The
here's
guillotine
the
comes
issue.
out.
Here's the issue. Let me be very blunt. You know
Yeah.
me. I hope you won't be
Yes.
offended. Uh, to be very honest, it seems to me that you feel like you need Islam to turn your life around. You feel like you need Islam. You depend on Islam. Without Islam, you wouldn't, your life wouldn't work, or you wouldn't find sense. You wouldn't find guidance. You need Islam, which is why you believe in Islam, which is why you
My,
follow Islam. That's what it
what's
appears to me like.
interesting, very good point. What's interesting is in Jahiliyyah, as you know, they call it. I wasn't necessarily doing bad things. I mean, early in my other younger years, maybe, but I do need. I've gotten so accustomed to it, and then my faith has become so. I love it. Like I'm addicted to learning about hadith. I love my prayers. I don't want to leave it. The routine, the patterns, everything about it. I love it so much that I wouldn't want to. I'd fight to keep it. Do you know what I'm trying to say? So
How
I
would your
wouldn't
life
need it.
be if you weren't a Muslim?
I think I'd be more. Oh, oh boy, I'd probably be more cruel. Yeah, I'd
In
probably
what
be.
sense?
I joined the military, and then I would totally try to. No, I don't think it would be. Islam holds me back from a lot of meanness. A lot of meanness. Yes.
What do you think about Islamic scripture and Islamic apologists and Islamic preachers saying that I, for example, deserve to be judged and executed for simply because I don't believe in Islam anymore.
I
Don't you
read
think
in a
that's cruel?
scholarly book that that is true, that you have to do that. So when I read that, I thought about, I don't know if you know, but when I was a gang member, I was in the Sureño Sur 13, and they tell you blood in, blood out. Now I'm not comparing Islam to a gang. Forgive me, that's not what I mean. What I mean is just follow me here. They tell you if you leave, we will find you, we will execute you, you will be done. And I remember getting jumped in, watching others get jumped in. The feeling of knowing if I leave, it's out in a body bag. The only reason why they haven't taken me out is because I live in a different state. And I don't go around telling people here what I once was. Right. But I know if I go back to that neighborhood, well, someone's going to put in work and take me out. Right. So it
Okay.
changed the way I joined the gang. So the function of blood oath, of once you enter, that's it, has a function of pure dedication. I think it's how do I put this? When I see people say their shahadas and then people don't tell them that they can be executed for apostasy, I find that deceptive. Where it's like, why don't you tell them? Well, if we tell them, then they won't join. But if that's what we have to do, then they should have their shahada with that. Like if you say your shahada and you know you're going to be executed if you leave, there's more power to that. But if you didn't know and then you join and then someone tells you and then someone takes it upon themselves or tries to force you to go to a place where that can be done, then it feels like you've been betrayed and it's not as
Okay.
honest as an oath.
Here are two things. One
Yeah.
thing is, in my opinion, it doesn't matter at all if you tell people or not, because
Okay.
people become part of a certain idea, of a certain belief out of passion in the moment. You are very passionate about Islam today. You might end up leaving Islam in 2 years because you might think, oh, I understand that I felt very passionate about it, that I loved it very much. I'm sure you made mistakes in your life, and I'm sure you believed in the past very much that you were doing the right thing. You join out of passion, but then at a later point in life you realize, wait a minute, I made a mistake. That was wrong. I can't follow this anymore. Then you will
You want
want
to
to
know
get
something
out.
very
And
interesting?
even if you knew that this is the punishment from the very beginning, it wouldn't change a thing because you thought you were doing the right thing, but now you changed your mind.
The interesting part is you have a very good point. But to be honest with you, I think I wouldn't want to be the one to execute you, and I wouldn't want to be the one to have to hand you over to be executed. I wouldn't want to be the one to have to pass out the sentence or hear it. You see what I'm saying? But if I left the fold, there's a part of me that feels like, well, maybe I should just die because I'd be so miserable. I'd be so confused. So this is a very interesting dynamic here because I feel like
Okay,
me and you
I
are
have to
kind of
I have to be a
opposites.
bit harsh here, but
Yeah, I know, I know.
if you accept accepting that you should probably die if you leave, and accepting that other people should die if they leave, are not necessarily the same thing. I mean, I could say, if I was harsh, I don't believe that you should die. I believe you should completely change your mind about that. You shouldn't die. You should go on with your life and live your life in a happy way. But I'm sorry. You can accept that you deserve death if you leave Islam, but that doesn't give you the right to also say others deserve to be killed if they leave Islam, because, I mean, that is what you would define as cruel. That is
I
what we
think
would
the
universally
way
define
I
as
would get
cruel.
out of it is that I'm not going to be the one rounding you up. I'm not going to be the one to and plus I like if we were living 1,000 years ago, maybe that law is there, but at the same time I think to myself, how, it's a lot of work, to gather those people up, process the bodies. I don't think that it's like gotta put them in a grave. It's a lot of work,
Do you
So
think
I
it's
think some
cruel to kill
people.
people who leave Islam?
I think what I've learned, because I haven't learned that much about it, but how do I look at it? Like if you were to say an oath to a Templar, a lot of them were, if you leave, you'll die. Politicians have that. Fraternities have that. Gangs have that. Blood oaths are very common. And so we have to analyze, like the mafia, the Italian mafia is omerta. You're in the cartels as well. If you leave, you die. So this concept, we have to wonder, why is it there for thousands of years in so many different aspects of reality on Earth? And I feel like the reason why that got established and adopted by so many is because it solidifies you on a unified cause.
Okay, but do you
So
think
I
it's
think that's
cruel?
why. So probably, yeah. I mean, to get beheaded is not a pretty thing,
So you think it
but
is cruel to execute apostates, but you were just saying that you would be more cruel if you were not a Muslim,
yes,
and
there's
you would see that
degrees
as
to
a big
cruelty.
you would see that
There's
as a big
degrees to cruelty.
downside. But you acknowledge that Islam's major rule of killing apostates if they leave is cruel as well.
Yeah, I mean, didn't the Jacobins in the French Revolution, they executed people for leaving their groups? They used the
Sure,
guillotine.
sure,
So it's
sure,
like
sure. They did.
a lot of groups have that, you know.
They did, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that is okay. This could be something that is bad, and in the past, it is an act of cruelty. You wouldn't want it to be applied to you. You have, I mean, you just said that you were once part of a certain gang, or you were part of that community. You are not anymore, simply because you reject that, because you think that that is wrong, that that is bad. Now, would you think it's okay for them to just come and kill you for that?
Well, I went back on my word. You know, I went back on my word
I
and I
did
left.
not. I did not.
I think they consider the
Most apostates do
Shahada
not.
it's an oath, so you went back on your oath.
No, I did not.
So,
I was
but
born into a Muslim family. I was raised as a Muslim, as most Muslims are raised as Muslims. So they never actually consciously gave an oath. They are born as Muslims. They are raised as Muslims. It is not their
good point.
choice. If they
Maybe
live,
there's some
if they
type of
leave Islam,
discussion they could have.
no,
Maybe it'll be different for born people than
no,
reverts, maybe.
on the contrary, according to the most Islamic scholars, on the contrary, those who are Muslims are more certain in receiving the death penalty, whereas those who just joined Islam and then leave Islam, there might be a little bit of a thing, like, you know, about them, like a little bit of doubt. But if I am born into a Muslim family and raised as a Muslim and grew up as a Muslim, and then at the age of 25 I decide no longer to believe in Islam anymore, then my punishment is certain death, according to those Islamic scholars that you respect and follow, Ibn Taymiyyah and all the others. You know, this is agreed upon. This is unanimous in the in Islamic jurisprudence. So I am being punished for something that I never even agreed to.
I think, I mean, I could totally hear how you could say that. Totally right. Okay. But I guess you would just have to live your life on the go. Just don't tell people you're ex-Muslim. I mean, now people know you're AP, but you're in America. You're gonna be all right. You know, you're gonna be okay. I mean, you
Okay,
might
no,
have more
no.
problems with a gang member in the street or just a regular junkie in the street who wants your iPod. I mean,
So do
or
you
your
support the
phone.
death penalty for apostates?
I don't really have a choice. You know, I don't really have like nobody's gonna listen to me. You know, so it's like I like
But
I
I think
said,
it
I wouldn't be the
matters.
one to gather you up, and maybe there'll be a way you can pay your way out. Who knows? But I know that if I was like in time of war, and because remember, this is kind of nerdy, but follow me here. Like Caesar, if you left the legion, you were killed. If you were in the ranks when he was fighting in Gaul, if you left the soldierly ranks, you were crucified. And that keeps others from running away. If you leave the tribes and the Native American tribes, you would be tomahawked in your head. You know, Cortez, when he conquered Mexico, he also punished runaway soldiers. So for me, like I said, this is hard for me because I look at it as it is setting an example. They want to set an example or keep in
Okay,
line.
but you're just giving examples that you know, of people do that. You know, people do that out of you know, to protect their community or because it works. But it doesn't have to
Yeah.
be that way. I mean, just because people have done that, just because that was a thing, that doesn't mean it is necessarily a good thing. And we obviously see nowadays you can change your mind about things. Humans are fickle. We are by nature meant to be very curious, meant to have great changes of mind. It is the feature of a healthy mind to change, of a healthy brain, of a healthy human to change their mind throughout their lives. I have changed my mind a lot on things, and before I became more religious and devout in my religiosity, I changed my mind toward bad things, and then changed my mind away from those things towards something good, and then from, by Islamic standards, good, and then from that to something after Islam. This is how a healthy mind works. This is human, and
And some
this,
people go back to Islam, so they don't get
of
executed
course,
right away.
of course, but
So, you know,
depending on what opinion you follow, if I, for example, under an ideal Islamic state, if I went back to Islam today and said, please forgive me, I'm sorry, I would still be killed under the Sharia, because I have not only left Islam, I have also spoken about it and against it, because I have used my mind, I've thought, and I've shared my opinions and my thoughts and my humor with people, but I deserve to die because of that, because I made a mistake.
I think that you're definitely in a predicament, right? You're definitely in a no-win situation as an apostate. I understand that nothing I can say can ever make you feel like you deserve to be punished. I
Okay, but
understand
do you
that.
support that? That's just what I'm curious about.
When you say support, like we can't take a vote on to be like, hey, should we just let them go, right? If there was a vote, I'd be like, hey, let's just vote, they can go. We can have debates on YouTube, right? And stuff like that. But if I was like in the military, right, or I'm the leader of a country, and I want to be more authoritarian, I could do that, right? But that's just my authoritarian side.
So you do
But
support it, and long story short.
uh, I don't know. I feel like I don't want to. Like if I didn't like, if it's harder if I know the person. Like if I know you, I'm gonna feel bad. But would I be in the center watching it be done? Maybe, yeah. And I'd be like, I don't know the person, so it doesn't really click. But if I know the person,
Milahan,
I'm like,
it
oh, that
sounds to
sucks.
me like you don't really like the rule, but you just have to accept it.
I haven't really like I have to really go deep on it because I support the death penalty, capital punishment. I support I wish we could bring back torture in certain prisons for certain horrible crimes. The electric chair, firing squad. Definitely wish we could bring that back in America instead of giving certain criminals life in prison with food and water. So I have a darker, meaner aspect, but for me, you're just a regular person, so it's a little bit different. I don't know. I don't really know how to word it yet because I have to learn more about it from what's the reasoning. And I haven't got to hear what's the reasoning because generals and leaders they have different reasoning than the common folk.
The
So
issue is reasoning is just made up by people, because when you look at the scripture or at the texts that we have, the fundamentals, you see that Muhammad simply says, "Those who leave their religion, kill them. That's it." Or he says, "The blood of a Muslim is only justified in three cases: retaliation, adultery, and leaving Islam." That's what he says. And then it is up to the Muslim scholars, and the apologists, those with opinions, to explain why this makes sense. And you could just as well come here and explain why you think it makes sense. The issue is the ruling is there. The explanation of the ruling is merely something that you make up in order to justify that certain ruling. And there is an unlimited amount of justifications that you could come up with because you are a human and you are intelligent.
yeah,
So
I mean
what
that's
you are
how
doing is
law works.
basically,
Though there's a law, and then you go about how does this work? Why is it this? I mean that's what
I,
you
I,
pretty much do.
I wouldn't say that's the law, how the law works. I wouldn't say that's how ideal laws work. I mean, we make laws nowadays because we think about certain things. We decide that they are right or wrong based on their, outcome and the implications of it, and so on. And we come together and decide, okay, look, this makes sense. This works. We should make this a law. In Islam, we don't have that. In Islam, you have the law. No reason is given to you. You are supposed to accept the law as it is. You cannot reject it, otherwise you are an apostate. And then you are supposed to sit down and simply explain why this law is true. You have no choice, as you said yourself.
I mean, but they don't present a reason to you. But I'm sure some people do. Like, oh, they would cause dissension. We want to set an example. I mean, that's why I keep saying is that throughout history, kings, generals, all types of civilizations had their reasonings on why they would punish certain people in such ways for leaving the group. So I
Okay.
understand there's no win for you. I mean, there's nothing I can do, like you can't help me if a gang member comes and takes me out. So it's like we can support it, yes or no, but there's crazy people in the world who are going to do it but no one can take it upon their own hands you have to go through a court process. But you're in
Okay.
America, so it's not really like, you're not necessarily you're not gonna get deported. So it's like you're fine. You're just hanging out.
Yeah, but we are talking about an ideal Islamic state and what Islam actually is, because we came to it. Because you said you would be cruel if you weren't a Muslim, and coming back to that, what else? If you weren't a Muslim, how would your life be?
I wouldn't have any sense of purpose. I don't think I would have the sense of why am I here? I would probably do less good deeds. I would just feel kind of floating, aimless, nihilistic, and might makes right in a non-Hobbesian way. So it would just be very, very intense. I wouldn't really have to hold back, you know? There'd be too much temptation, you know? Islam keeps me away from the occultists, keeps me out of drinking, pornography, gangs, violence, keeps me not materialistic, just, loving what is good in terms of being in nature, being calm, focus, organizing my life in a better way, studying constantly, reflecting on my existence and purpose, all kinds of goodness directly because of what it puts upon me. I don't really know how to explain it in a better way.
No,
Unless
I
you,
understand it. The issue is it looks to me as though you don't have the self-confidence to believe that you yourself could do the things that Islam forces you to do, or not to do the things that Islam forces you not to do. It
well, I
seems
fear
as though
Allah,
you
so
have a.
the fear is good because the
That's
fear
the
keeps
point.
me from disobeying.
That's the
Like,
point. You have a
yeah,
trauma. You have pain in your past. You have certain things in your past, and that's understandable. Many people do. I do as well. And you rebel against those things. You try to keep them out of your life. You try to fix yourself, and you could try to fix yourself on your own and find your path through life, or you could find a certain system which forces you to do this and not to do that, and which has very strict rules. It seems to me that you are, instead of trusting yourself, you are simply trusting this certain system that guides your life entirely.
I've studied all those systems though. That's the thing, is
Maybe you don't
that
need to follow the system.
um, it's not the same. It's just every single aspect of how you use the restroom, what you say when you wake up, when you go to bed. The prohibitions are more encompassing and therefore provide a larger network and framework that help to keep you as a net away. I cannot rely on myself. You have to have a compass. I have to have an internal yet external compass at the same time, the sort of Venn diagram of overlapping of the inner and the outer realms.
Okay,
Because
doesn't that mean you are, you believe in Islam because you need Islam?
I mean, everybody needs something. You don't need it, so you need yourself. So it's like everyone needs something in order to be
But that
alive.
would mean, but that could mean you simply believe in Islam because you depend on it, because you feel like you need it, not
Well,
necessarily
it
because it is
transformed
true.
me. It remember, like as each step I adopted, I became more and more convinced. I saw the results, which make you adhere to it more. When you're on the straight path, when you follow the rules and you see the results, and you see the transformation in both the outer and inner world of you, you see the sign and the revelation that hey, this is working, and this is how you become more and more attached to it.
I know many
And
Christians who can say the same thing. This is actually something that I hear from Christians very often, and you, I'm sure, do as well. We have David Wood here. As we know David Wood. He's when we have many others who say that their life was, completely broken and unsolvable. They were almost dying. They were addicted to certain things and all that. But then they found Christianity and their life completely turned around, and they have become better people and have ever since lived their life in such a peaceful way, with purpose, without violence, without addictions, and all that. They could say the same thing.
without doubt, you can find happiness and attachment to other things in this reality, without a doubt. But they are not in my reality. What happened to them, what's going to happen to them when we all die, doesn't matter. The only thing that I focus on is me and my child, and then how do I get into paradise? So the attachment I have, all these other people don't exist. None of them matter. They could all fall into a volcano. It just is about how do I survive my enemies? How do I become steadfast? How do I push through evil? How do I conquer my own temptations? How do I resist any type of pitfall? And the Sharia, the laws, the rules, the regulations, the admonitions, these have shown empirical and spiritual results for me that have proven to me with unreasonable doubt that this is the religion for me and that I would be willing to die for it.
I'm sorry, I'm pushing this, but it just
Totally.
sounds to me like it just sounds to me like you personally simply need it and depend on it again. I mean, that's what you're telling me.
But
Here's a
that's how
comment
you know
of
your iman is strong, right? Your
not
iman is
necessarily.
strong is when you need Allah. Allah is free from need, and I'm entirely dependent upon Allah.
Okay,
So I
but
think they would think that's a good thing in Islam.
people could explain all kinds of different beliefs just in the same way. Here's a comment from Arsenal Haq Fahim. He said,
Uh-huh.
"Please, somebody explain her that you don't need Islam to avoid drinking and pornography. I have been an atheist and I've never been involved, but it's my Muslim friends who frequently search for porn stuff, for example."
That's a
I could,
great point. But atheism doesn't forbid it, whereas Islam does. It's explicit.
but
You feel
clearly
me?
that's the point. Apparently, it doesn't matter because
Well, Muslim,
uh,
he's breaking the rules. He knows he's breaking the rules. But an atheist creed doesn't say you can't. It just doesn't say you should or you shouldn't.
okay,
It's
maybe you shouldn't be
neutral.
forced to abide by a certain thing. Maybe, I mean, you don't have to be forced to do that. Maybe you personally feel like you need to be forced, but that's not the same thing for others. I don't need to be forced by a certain system. Many people in the world, maybe most people in the world, don't need to be forced to stay away from certain things or to do certain things.
It's
People,
good if you choose not to, but force is needed against evil.
it's not. It's not.
Evil doesn't.
It's seriously
You
is
can't
not.
be kind to evil.
Okay, but
Evil has to be conquered.
people come to good and evil in the world due to the outcomes of good actions and evil actions. We don't murder each other outside wherever we can because we know, as societies, as people, we come to the conclusion, hey, if we keep doing this to each other, nobody will, be able to flourish and live a peaceful life. I'm sure you know of the idea of flourishing, which is one of the fundamental ideas of ancient Greek philosophy. And
Well, I mean, look at Chicago. You know what I mean? Chicago is
yeah,
like every
yeah.
time people shoot each
Yeah,
other. So I
yeah.
don't know. We
If we
want
keep
the
shooting
purge.
each other,
Yeah.
we can't live peaceful lives. So maybe we should not do that. But the issue
But
is,
some people don't want peace. Some people want power.
sure, and that is a problem, and you need to fix that. That's a problem, and you can make laws to fix that. The issue is you don't need Islam or a similar system in order to enforce those things upon yourself. You can simply, explore life, live the human experience, and refrain from certain things that are obviously dysfunctional and destructive because they are dysfunctional and destructive. You don't need to be forced for that. Many people
But
don't need to be forced
remember,
for that.
curiosity killed the cat. Some things should not be looked at. Some things should be closed with force. To open Pandora's box and expect everything to come out smoothly is indeed reckless. You're supposed to be guardians. Guardians of keeping what's good good and keeping evil out. People can learn to fail. They can trial and error. You can help them recover, but you don't turn your back to evil and you never give up the pressure. And force is needed. And some people have to not some people have a weaker disposition to where, like, if someone's smoking crack, you have to yank it out of their hand. You don't say please stop. You have to take it out. It's a bit of force. Depends on the person's disposition and how evil is wrapped around their lives. So
Okay, but
cool that the atheist can resist it, but some people are so heavily addicted, they need you to kind of take away their phone, cut off the Wi-Fi, sit down and talk to them, huge intervention, like you got to work on it. And that takes force and other elements,
don't you think
right?
you're presupposing that humans are meant to have such a thing in the world? Could it not be that humans are simply living beings who experience life and who experience the world around them, and we are not meant to have a system that, perfectly dictates our life and tells us exactly what to do and what not to do in specific instances? I mean, this may be your expectation from life due to your experiences, but you are very much presupposing that such a thing is supposed to exist. Maybe such a thing is not supposed to exist. Maybe such a thing doesn't exist. And we are simply the humans that we are.
So I think, humans have always tried to impose law and order onto a wild type of human existence, right? I mean, that's kind of what humans have been doing for a while. Each one wants to enact their edicts. They want to form their utopia. They
Yeah.
want to instill it, and they create their codes and they enact it, and that's what they try to do.
Out of
Um,
necessity.
yeah, and to get things done, you have to have a certain cohesion, a confederacy or a union, and these things get adopted, and each force has to have an army in order to have compliance and stuff. So I understand where you're coming from. For me, though, it would be good to have Islam and the way in which it's reformed me, and some of the temptations and vices around that exist in America could be reduced heavily, and more families could stay together, and stability would be better. Doesn't mean we would rid the world of everything, because evil will always exist, but we could help stem off some thorns and some foots, is my point.
Okay. So far you've told me that Islam is functional and it feels right. I still don't understand why you think Islam is true.
Okay, another way, well, the military aspect as well. Another way in
But
which I
that
feel
is
that,
also functional. It's you still haven't told me why Islam is true. These are only
but
supporting
you must understand,
thoughts.
though, that through a patriarchal masculine system, that establishes the harmonic ways of a civilization that will allow peace and flourishing. Masculine heterosexual men who can have polygamy and have multiple children, who are brave warriors, who fear Allah. This is the best system for the earth, in my opinion, because of the way it provides security to wives and children and helps us to be righteous, steadfast, bold, courageous human beings. That is how I see the religion forms men. Yes, they will fail, I understand. But I'm saying the ideal. Each religion has their ideal members and how they wish to see them,
Okay,
right?
first of, I would completely disagree with certain things that you have said, but you are going for pragmatism, basically. You are being you are telling me that Islam is pragmatic, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything. Um, the Quran itself says that this life is nothing but play, nothing but entertainment. This life doesn't really matter. You are supposed to focus on the next life. So why are you trying to desperately find a pragmatic way to improve this life, to make this life perfect, when your ultimate goal is simply to live a very short life here and then to go on to paradise?
Well, the more you fight against evil, the more good deeds you do, which your good deeds meet you in the hereafter on your day of accounting. So that's why you have to go around the earth fighting your battles that you can fight verbally, mentally, maybe getting a water filter in certain areas, just doing as many good things as you can. And then that will make the world better. And then you leave something better for your children, for your descendants. And then you have those deeds forwarded to you in the hereafter.
You
That's
talked
why.
earlier about doing certain things with children. Do you think I'm going to jump right into it, but uh, do you think child marriage, like a 50-something-year-old guy marrying a 6-year-old child, is good for humanity?
The way I learned about this is, I'll say something personal. Um, my grandmother, my mother, and me, we were all molested. So this was a very dark topic to discuss. The way I look at it is, I would never allow my daughter, ever, to marry anyone older like that. And the way I see it is, the parents will decide what happens to their child. That you're not it's not compulsory. It's not compulsory for you to allow that. And if it's the end of the world and there's no other way for humanity to go forward and my child is there, maybe that'd be the only situation where I as a parent would allow that.
Okay, I'm very sorry. I'm sorry for what you
And
experienced.
I know you're gonna say, like, okay, but the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, did that. We're not allowed to criticize him in that way. And who knows why Allah allowed it. And I've heard all kinds of arguments. I read a book on her. She was, pretty wise lady, pretty cool. But for me and my daughter, I would never, I wouldn't, if anyone even asked, they would be executed by me. I don't agree. No one can touch my daughter. No one can ask for my daughter. No. And this is something that there's a
So
lot of
you
fighting
went through
about it
something
in the
that is
Muslim
bad.
community.
You went through something that is bad, and I feel very sorry about it. And you want to protect your daughter, your child, from going through something similar. And you are talking about preventing evil in the world. But at the same time, you are advocating for a system in which parents are allowed to give off their children without age restrictions to older men in marriage. So you are advocating for a system and allowing for a system in which parents are allowed to give their children away in a situation where they would be abused in such a way that you yourself cannot stomach it and you wouldn't allow it for your own children. In Farid's words, it's not rape when the parents allow it, because
But
there's
remember,
parental consent.
atheism as a whole doesn't disavow that either, or liberalism for
It
that
doesn't have
matter.
to be. Atheism doesn't have any rules. But the issue is, with atheism, for example, I can sit down here and I can find my way and weigh the pros and cons and see what is healthy and what is unhealthy and all that. The issue is, we're not talking about something that does not forbid something. We're talking about something that explicitly allows that certain thing. You are not allowed to make this illegal or to condemn this because your religion allows it and your Prophet Muhammad practiced it, which is why people like Daniel Hikichu today say this is a wholesome value.
I think what I've learned about it from anthropologists is that it was a different time period, and if you're not too many people around, um, you're poor, resources are low, you have this option, but it's not forced upon you. You don't have to if you don't want to allow it. That's just how I've seen it talked about because, this is obviously something people bring up a lot, and without a doubt, they would like to examine it. But all
Okay,
I can say is,
but you think we should prevent evil, but at the same time you are, as said, advocating for a system in which this cannot be disallowed. It is allowed. It is practiced. Parents can make you may not want to do this to your own child because you think it is disgusting and horrible, but your neighbor who is a Muslim might allow their 5-year-old daughter to get married to some 50-year-old guy.
the hard part is that I cannot, even in America, if my neighbor does something, I cannot prevent them, right? I can't prevent anyone else from doing anything, regardless of their religion. If a Jewish rabbi wants to do that weird circumcision ritual that they do, where they suck off the foreskin of the baby, I can't stop the rabbi from doing that or the Jewish family from doing that to their newborn boy. You see what I'm saying? All I can do is say, this is my daughter. I have full authority over her. She will get married when she's mentally capable. She's had her period, and when
Okay,
she's mentally mature.
this is a big double standard. This is a big, huge double standard. If you live in a society where child marriage is illegal, where it is banned, where such a thing is completely banned, but if Islam was brought to that society, then Islam would lift that ban and would make it possible for little children to be married to old guys with the permission of their parents. This is something that Islam would bring. So Islam would actually bring something destructive that even makes you feel very uncomfortable. Are you aware of that?
I'm aware of that, and I'm also aware that, like, even the French kings, they married 14-year-olds, 12-year-olds. The age was very young previously because people died
Of
much
course, and
sooner.
they make mistakes. They were wrong.
Yeah.
We don't have to deflect to other things and say, well, they did it too. So
No, I know what
we
you're saying,
we
that they did
acknowledge
it
that
too.
it
But
is bad.
but
It
the point
harms a
is
child.
that each mother can just say no, right? And I don't have to advocate them and help them. I don't have to facilitate their child marriage, is my point.
Okay, but you're supporting a system in which this is okay.
Well, I love Allah. That's what I care about. As I love Allah, I don't. I love Allah, and I'm not a champion of child marriage. Do you see what I'm trying to say?
But
But if someone,
that
but
makes you are not. But that makes that is not consistent with your entire idea, which you have advocated for from the beginning, which is that Islam brings a system which gets rid of the evil, because Islam in this case brings the evil that you are talking about.
I guess the way you just have to really look at it is You're in a very tough situation. That the way I've looked at it in my head, it may not be how everyone else has seen it, but if you're in a war zone, if you are a refugee, you're separated, there's just no other way, and you see this as a legal outlet, you're like, okay, well, I guess it's legal under the Sharia, and I'm gonna die, and I need somebody to marry my kid or take care of her, and there's no uncles. Maybe that'd be a last resort. I look at it as a last resort of permissibility.
That's how
Just
you look
because
at it.
Abu Bakr, but I have to learn more about it though too, is because just because Abu Bakr as-Siddiq allowed his daughter, and Aisha became this really important figure in Islam, even though I know she's not liked by Shias. I don't think that then means that everyone else has to. I guess it just means that it's a possibility, but I think mothers can also just get their sons married to different women. You see what I'm
No,
saying?
no, the issue is whether they have to or don't have to. It's completely besides the point. I don't care if people have to do this or don't have to do this. I don't mind if about that at all. The issue is that Islam provides a system in which this is allowed. If we look at child marriage, if we look at a relationship between a little child and an old man, the research on this is abundant. It is harmful to a little child. It is psychologically harmful. It is physically harmful. It harms the reproductive system of a child. It is harmful in so many different ways. It is destructive. A child is not ready until a very late age to handle such a thing. But you would advocate for a system in which this is allowed. So the system that you are bringing would be harmful, really harmful, objectively harmful in this case, to the child, to the individual. Now imagine this. You advocate for Islam. Islam comes to your place, to your neighborhood. Islam is implemented, and around you are two families. They both have little children, little daughters, and you really like those little daughters, those little children. And those people, those neighbors, decide that it is their right to marry those little children to 60-year-old men, and they are allowed to do that. How would you feel about that?
Well, I would talk to the mother and say, well, why can't you just wait? What's the hurry? What's going on here? Do you need
Okay, what
money?
if
I'll
she
give you
doesn't?
the
What if she
money.
doesn't listen to you?
Well, this if you can't. A mother has authority over her kid. I cannot like it, right? Like, so there's nothing much I can do besides say, hey, why don't you just wait? You can try to reason, right? But child marriage, occultists do that, Satanists do that. There's weirdo Christians in the Alabama who do weird things.
Do you
The
think Islam
act
is
of
similar
child
to
stuff
cultism?
is something that happens, you know. And
Would you
even in
hate
rural
that?
villages in Africa, they do those kind of things as well. So it's a thing that's like, it's part of the human condition anthropologically, and the best we can do is just not allow our daughters to go into it because they're not going to be the wife of a prophet.
Okay, here's the thing. You told me earlier that you want to force people to not do these evil, horrible things that you abhor. And you said
Hmm.
we need force. Force is absolutely necessary. So you want to force people to not do certain things, to not do certain things to others, not do certain things to themselves. You absolutely abhor child marriage, but in this case, you don't want to force people not to do child marriage because you think, well, if they want to do this evil, if they want to do something destructive and abusive to a little child, there's nothing we can do. It's just they will just do it anyway. So do you
I
now
would try
believe
to
in
adopt
forcing
the
people or do you
child.
not?
Well, the hard part is that you're not allowed. Some people want to hurt you if you criticize that in any way. But the thing is that I say, okay, if Allah decreed for this specific example of the prophet to have this wife, I'll find out what's the truth when I die. But that doesn't mean I need to facilitate, aid, clap my hands for anyone who does it in this reality, because it doesn't say I have to do that. So I can advise mothers, um, why don't you just wait? What if I adopt your child? What if, I give you money, then you can have food, you don't have to sell your daughter. I'm very into protecting children. So she had a specific role that Allah decreed for her, and that was her destiny. But that doesn't then mean that I have to have my kids go over and do that. I don't know how else better to answer it. Just the point, like some Muslims, they go very gung ho and they're like, yes, we'll allow it. Like I know Ali Dawa, as you mentioned. I saw that video. I have a different route, and I wouldn't allow that. And the Prophet was decreed by Allah to have that, but he didn't. It's like this nuance of like scholarly interpretation, you know? It really is something interesting to look at. Just because he did it, now you can't criticize anything the Prophet did, but that doesn't mean you have to then push for and advocate for it. If you're in a very rural village and you want to betroth somebody, okay, but to consummate, it's different.
Do you think what Muhammad did was evil?
I think it had to be. I don't know what to think about it. I think I can't say it's evil because then you're saying that the Prophet did something evil, and then you're out of the fold of Islam.
But do
But
you
I would
think it is
say
evil
that
to marry a little child?
I would wonder why Abu Bakr did that. You'd have to ask the father. That's why you say wait till we die, right? That's how I look at it. Like, I read a book about her. She was a fantastic lady. You know, she was a hero. She saw so much. She wrote down all these hadiths. So she's like the mother of believers. So she has like this huge respect for her, and you learn to love her, and you're like, you know, I don't look at Aisha just as a child bride. You see what I'm trying to say? I say,
The
oh,
issue
that
is
happened, you know?
the issue is people can look back at you
Yeah,
and say, look, she was amazing. She studied a lot. She read a lot. She thought a lot, and she gave us all these wonderful ideas. She made people think and all that. That doesn't negate the fact that in the past you were abused, and that doesn't mean that the certain abuse that was inflicted upon you can thereby be simply, dismissed or downplayed. It is evil. It is very hurtful. It is something that you suffered from that still means a lot to you, that still is a pain upon you which you feel. So you understand what I mean? And even if
yeah,
she did live a good life, and even if she did contribute to something, that doesn't negate the fact that she may have gone through abuse at a part in her life that she didn't have to go through.
true, right? But I tend not to look at people as victims. I tend to say, that happened to you, Allah decreed it, move forward. Because there's victim culture now, that wallow in their past. I try to look beyond it, you know? Okay, that happened to you, but don't let that be you. That
Okay, but that
happened,
doesn't
go
mean that the thing
forward.
that happened is not a bad thing, right?
True, exactly. But maybe Allah has his reasons that are above my head, you know? Like a crab will eat its babies. There's so many weird things in nature where you're like, huh, this planet is pretty weird. You know, this planet is pretty intense. A pig will eat its own baby. Like, you know, you're like, what's going on here? This planet is pretty rough, you know? So it's like, well, test and trial, everyone has their burden. Everyone has their trial. And the best I can do is protect my own.
I'm sorry, Milan. The thing is, I'm stuck on this point, and I pushed you
Yeah.
quite a bit. Maybe not even enough. I don't know, but I think your inability to answer this question properly comes from the fact that you are falling in hypocrisy and having double standards on this issue. You,
I think you could
we,
say that. Yeah, that I have a double standard where I would allow the Prophet to do it, but I wouldn't allow my own daughter to do it. Is that your point?
no, I would say you know that this is bad, that this is evil. You yourself do not want to allow such a thing, but you also see that you are not allowed to say that this is bad, this is evil, that must be rejected. You know that you cannot say this,
Mhm.
so you contradict yourself in this and say, well, I can't really answer this question properly.
Well, the thing is, this is that we have in Bukhari that hadith, right? So I think to myself, they didn't really keep track of birthdays that much. What is time? Okay, he did this. I gotta trust Bukhari that it was that age, but I can't throw out the whole religion because of that. I just can't because it's like a very tight hold on me that I love so much. Do you see what I'm trying to say?
I
So
do.
yes, I'm sure like there is an internal conflict, and I think so many Muslims struggle with this. But all I can do is say the Prophet, peace be upon him, and Allah decreed something for that specific girl, and Abu Bakr, as the father, felt it was like that. I can have my daughter and my rules. It's not compulsory upon me, and I just want to do good deeds and die. That's how I look at it. I
That's
know that's not
bad.
the perfect answer you want.
That's bad. That's bad. I'm sorry. That's
Yeah.
bad. I think you really need to think about that more deeply, and I would love to have you. I would love to talk with you about this again. But I think this is bad. I think if a different religion came up with this system, if a different religion or a different society or different individual came up with this whole issue of marrying a little child away, you would be disgusted by. I see your community posts. You are disgusted by certain things. You heavily, harshly criticize them, and I see your passion there. But if it was something or somebody else, you would be very harsh toward that. But you are simply letting something that is even so personally traumatic to you slip away because you simply have to give into that and simply have to accept it, and you're not allowed to object to that.
I mean, you got me pigeonholed. There's not. I can't go left. I can't go right. You pretty much have me pigeonholed, and I can't argue any other way out of it, really. But
And
I
I hope
know,
and I
you
hope
know,
you see that that's not my aim here. I'm not trying to put you down or to whatever it is that people want to do online in discussions. I'm really simply trying to make you see,
and you're
as
testing
I
my
see
mind,
it,
which is
that you
good.
are wrong. That you are no. I'm trying to let you see that you are wrong and you are in conflict with yourself. And I would say that you should fix that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna let my daughter marry anybody like that. So, and there's not gonna be another prophet, so I don't really have to worry about it.
Okay.
You know.
Are you aware of the idea that going away from morality and laws for a second, but I'm sure you have. I'm sure you have come across this whole criticism that I offered, in which Muhammad made certain prophecies about the future, about the end, where he said that certain things will happen. For example, he said when certain people came to him and asked, "When is the hour?" He said to them, after pausing for a little bit, he looked at a young boy in his presence and said, "Before this young boy gets very old, the hour will come to you." Or the hour will come. That's what he said. So the implication here, the indication in this hadith is clearly that he is saying, upon the question, when will the last day come? He says, before this boy gets old, it will come. But then, obviously, we are alive today. It didn't happen. Similarly, he said one night, within 100 years, no living being will survive. And he made many other such predictions. So he was obviously prophesying that the end is coming very soon, but it didn't come. Are you aware of these mistakes?
I've heard of these hadiths, but I often wonder, what does he exactly mean as in intervals of time? That a certain time frame will begin, a certain interval of time. This is something very niche and nerdy that I think the scholars of hadith would dig into. That prophecy subject that I've heard you mention before is not my area of expertise. I've read those hadiths, but I have not contemplated about those things in particular. So I can't really help you in that area, unfortunately.
But if you knew that Muhammad did make certain prophecies, which seem to be false, would this be a problem to you?
I would have to ask, like I said, a scholar who is going to explain to me what the context is. Even though I know it's very clear as you put it, um, I don't know. I'd have to what's the chain? What is the point? Does it have another meaning? What is it all about? You know what I'm trying to say?
The issue is obviously the Muslim apologists will try to say, well, it was actually referring to their death or something else. But I mean, what do you understand if you simply read this here? I can read it for you. Anas bin Malik reported that a person asked Allah's apostle, when would the last hour come? Thereupon Allah's messenger kept quiet for a while, then looked at a young boy in his presence belonging to the tribe of Azd Shanu, and he said, if this boy lives, he would not grow very old till the last hour would come to you. The to you is not here, by the way, they just added that. Anas said this young boy was of our age during those days. This is a hadith that is confirmed by in more instances than just this one. What do you think about this?
Well, essentially, the hour can come as, how long is that of time period? Are we talking eons? Are we talking decades? Some things can begin when a certain person is there and certain events can unfold in a way in which you will see, hey, this is a slippery slope. This is where we're headed. The path has begun. There is no turning back. That's how I would take something like that. As in, when this a certain event happens, this is when everything will start to unfold how it is supposed to unfold over the span of time. Not that it will cumulatively end at that particular time, but that's semantics of language, right?
Yeah, but
But
the thing is, the hour would refer to, or the last hour as it is put here, would refer to the end as people have known it. And the end is also described in other hadiths, in many others. Like, for example, he says that Dajjal will come, the sun will rise from the west, and this and that, and then the hour will happen. And in this case, people ask him again about this specific hour, which is also described in the Quran specifically. On that hour, the sun will, turn off, and this and that. And in this hadith, people ask him specifically about that hour again, and he says, "Before this boy grows old, the hour will be established," is what it literally says. Why would he be giving an answer that doesn't answer their question at all, but that is about certain different dynamics that are not relevant to their question?
well, the Prophet, peace be upon him, is the final seal of the messenger. So for him, it's like, hey, this is the time period. This is when it's going to begin. That is how I would read it, because we know that even in Christianity, how God measures time is definitely not how we do it. And so the movement of time and how that goes across and how fast that will happen, it's definitely not going to be just really short, but it can also be the start of a sequence of events. That's pretty much how I would read something like that, which doesn't fully answer you. But for me, I look at it as, okay, this boy is alive, right? Obviously, Jesus is not going to come back when this boy dies, but rather he's a sort of signpost of what time period we're entering into concerning how the end of days is going to be. But this is, again, scholarly opinion, so that's the fun part, yet the difficult part when you're, arguing semantics and theories and speculating and trying to dissect what it is being said here, right? That's the fun part, yet hard part, and different people will say different things. So for me, that's what I've thought about it, but I haven't gone really beyond that or deeper into it, so I can't really provide you the answer that you're looking for.
You see where I have a problem with this, right?
Yeah, I can.
Here in Sahih Bukhari, for example, he says, Allah's Messenger said, "By him in whose hands my soul is, the Son of Mary, Jesus, will shortly or will soon descend among you people as a just ruler, and will break the cross and kill the pig and abolish the jizya, and so on. There will be an abundance of money, and nobody will accept charitable gifts." Now, you could say that soon is relative, or shortly is relative, and it could be anything. It could be a millennium, it could be 2 millennia, whatever it is. But describing it as soon, again, seems a little bit strange to me. And this, again, supported by many other hadiths in which he seems to make such prophecies,
But only Allah knows the hour, and Allah, Azza wa Jal, can decide when He's going to do it, because only Allah knows. I understand that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, may have been given some insights, maybe had saw something, but Allah ultimately can do whatever He wills. So if Allah decides to make him think it's going to be in this time, and then because of our language, the way we structure it, we can think a certain thing, but that doesn't mean our interpretation is correct in a way. I hope I said that clear. So
Yeah,
essentially, it's like, even in like when you read texts like the Tao Te Ching, like there's so many different ways you can look at it, but at the end of the day, it's like there are certain end time things that are going to happen. Soon can be like, I know how it sounds as like, oh, tomorrow, right? I get that it
don't
sounds
you
like it's going
think
to happen tomorrow.
don't you think that would mean that Muhammad maybe misinformed us or misinformed people? Because, I mean, due to these prophecies, for example, people believed in his time that the end will come very soon because the signs are appearing and all that. So humans have believed in the imminent coming of the end since the beginning of Islam, since Muhammad's appearance, since Muhammad's life and his death, because of these prophecies. It would appear then in this case that Muhammad misinformed us, that he gave us information that doesn't exactly add up, that is not entirely correct. But he is supposed to be the inspired, perfect prophet of Allah. If he's misinforming us about these things, how can we trust his knowledge and the revelations that come out of his mouth in general? Maybe those were also misinformation.
Well, the way I would look at it is we have a duty upon ourselves to examine what are we going to do here? How are we going to live? The waves and pressure of concurring events can make us feel and that, okay, now, Jesus is coming back tomorrow. But things have to unfold and certain events have to pile up and come to a capstone in order for everything to happen. So as things can get worse, they also get bad. So humans often speculate, okay, this means soon means tomorrow. There's a lot of different religious groups who try to speculate when the hour is. But time, these big measurements of time is like soon is, generations upon generations.
Mm-hmm.
That is basically how you have to look at it. I understand that it sounds like tomorrow, within 200 years, but the idea is to keep it in your brain so that you can reflect upon your behavior and to survive. That's how I look at it. You're told it soon so that you never stop being vigilant. You're told it soon so that you never stop giving up and you never lose hope and you stay on the proper path so that you can keep your momentum and energy up so you can facilitate your energy towards the higher goal of earning paradise and preparing for a time where it's going to be disastrous and the
I think
cumulation
if I
will
need to
happen.
follow a carrot to be led, then I think it could be done in a different way that does not involve misinformation and deception. For example, I could have been told nobody knows when the hour will come. It can happen anytime. It can happen tomorrow. It can happen whenever. So prepare for it. And I would be in fear of the idea that just tomorrow things will end and go down. The issue is we have very specific prophecies and very specific announcements from Muhammad, promises that they will happen in relation to certain events and certain time frames. So I think that explanation and that excuse would not sound reasonable to me. I think that would not satisfy the curiosity here.
Well, there are mini tragedies, right? So there's like mini endings of time when certain economic systems collapse, certain rulers fall. There's little mini collapses that will lead to the bigger ones. So big shifting of power. There's a lot of different little elements of nuance that can make you see like, okay, things are changing. We may not see it, but things rise and fall, and maybe our descendants will see the final capstone of it. I don't
That
think it's like
sounds like
surfing on a wave where you just get to go on the top and get to go to the end.
that sounds like cognitive dissonance to me, Milan. and, and I'm not saying people use the term cognitive dissonance a lot. This is not something that you just accuse others of, or that some people have. We all have cognitive dissonance. I have cognitive dissonance from time to time. It just looks like in this case, you are trying to explain something in a way that seems inexplicable.
I mean, that's how I look at it. Like, what is time? That's a big question philosophers and atheists have also wrestled with as well, right? How word formulates like your language. I mean, Heidegger went into that, didn't he? Where he's like, our thinking is encapsulated in our words, and to translate words from one language to the other, to compute that in your mind, it's going to come different than another person's. So that's the fun part, is that we have these hadiths. We can try our best to understand them. But at the end of the day, we say, I know that you don't like when people say this, but Allah and His Messenger know best.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to say that Muhammad definitely didn't think that deeply about things, as far as we see in the reports about him. I would say he didn't. This is just a system which spread to the world as a consequence of certain exploits in his time and in his region, which we came to accept forcibly. My ancestors accept this religion forcibly because it was spread through war. Even if they were not forcibly converted on the spot, they had to, get used to it and become a part of it, because this is the new reality. That's simply how it works. And now it has become a major religion that spread across the world. world by political and military warfare. And some people like you get introduced to this religion and find something good within it and believe in it, but there is not more to it. The sources that we have expose Muhammad to be somebody who didn't know much about the future, who made a lot of false prophecies about the future, like these, who didn't know what diseases are, for example. I mean, I'm not sure if you're aware of that. I'm probably going to publish a video just for that purpose, but you could watch out for that. He says that infectious diseases are a superstition; they don't exist. Is what he thought in his time, for example. His morals are not in line with what you would think is good for society. You hate child marriage. At the same time, you think we are supposed to force people to do the right thing and to prevent the wrong things. But Islam brings child marriage. Muhammad himself practiced child marriage. People like Daniel Haqiqatjou want to bring child marriage back. So while you consider it evil and detest it, he wants to bring it back into your society and wants people to be free to practice it because he considers it wholesome, while you consider it evil. And he considers it wholesome because of the Islamic religion. And you consider it evil, but you cannot object to it because it is the Islamic religion. There is a big conflict going on here, and
but it seems it's just one objection. The child issue is for a survivalist aspect. You have that aspect, but other than that, I don't see what other problems do you have with.
There are many problems. We didn't even get into those. I mean, the apostasy issue was there. The child marriage issue was there. You will say that polygamy is okay, and I heard you explain that it is you would like it. The issue is the explanation that you gave to it is applicable to you, maybe because you give yourself such a value. It's not the same for others.
The funny part is that you see secular feminist atheists arguing that monogamy is awful. So I don't know. You got some of those little nymph-like atheist girls going around being wild. I mean, so I don't know if you can criticize Islam for wanting marriage, which is much superior than to OnlyFans culture, right?
Yeah, I don't agree with the idea that monogamy is bad. I think it works quite well. But the issue is we are not.
Is your wife there in the background? Is she gonna get mad if you don't say that? She's gonna pop out and be like, "What'd you say?"
She knows how I feel about it.
Okay. You sure you don't like polygamy? You sure, AP? You sure?
It works. The issue is the alternative to monogamy is not the Islamic system of polygyny, or we are not between these two choices. That would be a false dilemma. So why would you advocate for this Islamic system of polygamy?
Ooh, well, yes, now getting into the good meat and potatoes. Well, essentially, that will give much more women husbands, okay? America has 13 million single mothers. Single motherhood is an awful condition, even though I respect women who have to endure it. My mom is a single mom. She raised partly of me. It was horrible. I understand that liberal feminists and stuff, they glorify single motherhood, but it's really demeaning to men to make it think that they don't matter. And polygamy is this acceptance of the male psychology and biology. It is very good for men to have a group of women who he's married to, that he can exercise his body, give them children in a way that is with marriage. Because some men, I should say, I won't speak in overlapping terms, but some men, they desire more than one woman, and it's better to do it in marriage than to go around to brothel culture, stripper culture. You have women you're married to, they don't have STDs. If you can provide them a home, this is much superior.
It is women desire that too. The whole idea that this is only exclusive to men is an idea of the past. This is an idea of the past. It is known today.
I hate this example. Women, okay. Any woman I saw, okay, this is such a lie. Like, so many women say, like, oh, I'm so hot-blooded that I could have intercourse, with 4 different guys a week. It's like your tissues down there don't allow it. It's a wholly different type of psychology. My mother was an adult entertainer. I heard all this kind of stuff before. They have to use alcohol, drugs, they gotta lube up. Women want connection and love way more often than men do. Men are totally just different biologically. A woman, if she has 4 husbands, she has cuck husbands. Oh, please. They're the softest, frailest. Like, no man with self-esteem is going to wait in line and have intercourse with his pregnant wife that has another man's child in her belly and like 3 other dudes like living in the same house.
Milan,
It's just not going to happen.
I'm sorry to disagree here, but many women will have the same attitude about your idea of waiting in line for the other,
They
3
already are.
women to
They
be.
like it's totally different though. Like the women opening their legs to half the world is different than a man having, 4 wives, right? It's so much more different. It's so different because one woman's pregnant, the other 3 are not. 2 are pregnant, 1 is not. Even if they are, they're still his child.
Okay, we're making very big, sweeping generalizations here. First off, many women, many men don't want to have 4 wives. I certainly wouldn't want to have 4 wives. I don't want to have multiple wives. That would be a headache. But that's besides the point, of course. Just to argue against that initial point, many women would not want to be part of such an arrangement and be the 4th or 2nd or 3rd wife. And the issue is, it is not Islamically arranged in such a way that women necessarily have a say on that. If a man gets into an arrangement and marries a woman, then he is technically allowed to marry multiple women after that, whether the wife agrees with it or not. So women may
Yes,
not
because
want to have
women
such a
don't have a
desire.
right to just overly control men. I like that.
But if you want to
I
get
am a
into a
very controlling
commitment,
woman, but there's something nice and erotic about a guy who takes control. If a man can get overpowered, then he's not a man. If the woman gets to stomp her feet and whine and smack and scratch and cry and key his car and throw his clothes off the balcony, it's like she's just a wild brat woman, and he can have 2 submissive wives.
Imagine you're a woman.
Hey, make me Khabib's 800 wife. I don't care.
Okay. A woman gets into a relationship with a man and gets married to this man. Okay.
Yeah.
These 2 people start a relationship, and this woman, under the assumption that these people found each other, gets into this relationship. But then the man says, you know what, I actually want more than just 1 wife. So he goes and marries a few more wives, and in this relationship, these wives are then not considered equal to him. They are considered less than him. They are basically lesser beings who are supposed to, very much serve him and obey him and all that.
It's good to serve your man.
These women are then supposed to share this guy's love. Now you might say, I am okay with that. I want such an arrangement. That's what you might say. The issue is many women, and I would say most women, don't agree with that. But
they get cheated on regardless. Their men are probably watching porn. They're at work flirting, looking at the hot waitress. I mean, so many women, especially in America, they get cheated on all the time by their men. So come on,
your husband watching porn is not equal to your husband having 3 more wives.
But he's coveting those hotter chicks. He wishes he could be there, but he can't. He's stuck on his phone cucking to some other guy on the screen. The point is that a man with wives he doesn't have that crutch. He doesn't depend upon pornography. He has flesh and blood, real women who will cook for him, love him. There's honor in being a 2nd, 3rd, or 4th wife.
It's not true though. Even if a man has 4 wives, the man will still be out there and still desire other women. That doesn't solve the problem.
He may be very hot-blooded, but chances are he's going to be pretty work, his wives, his children. He's going to be pretty busy,
And the thing is,
he'll be busy with better things.
You talk about women and how women are not capable of continuing such a relationship with multiple men, but the issue is that's again besides the point.
They have deep psychological issues. Some of those ladies.
Women also have the desire to look at other men all the time, to be with other men, and so on. This is proven. This is part of psychology. I mean, women also have the same desires, maybe not to the same extent and to the same shape, but also have the desires to be with other men. Just because humans seem to have these natural desires,
you can look at an attractive guy.
That doesn't mean you have to establish such a system.
But you can see an attractive guy and be like, he's handsome. But if you're going on like these TikTok competitions where your body count is like 205 men, Those women just need a really good, solid, righteous, masculine man, and they're going to submit and they're going to be happy to be home having children. This
That's what
sounds so
you
odd.
say.
I've been around the feminists and the liberals since like forever in California in the Bay Area, and I've seen and tested their philosophy. I'm born of a stripper and I'm born of a drug dealer. Like I've seen their philosophy just not work out. And you talk to these strippers, you talk to these porn stars, they are so screwed up in their head that they're like, I've been around, no one loves me, no one wants to marry me, I have to get high to have sex with people. They're not happy. And the girls who are party girls in San Francisco and they like go and they, go on Tinder and they hook up with all these guys, they have steep narcissistic psychological fracturings in their mind. Now, if those girls often make great second wives because they've already gone through the rodeo and they're ready to calm down and be with somebody. Women grow up after about 30 if they're not fully indoctrinated into the woke ideology of leftist degeneracy. This is something that I'm very passionate about because I've seen the beauty of it. Polygamy is a solution in the Islamic fashion because you're a wife with honor instead of a side chick who gets a pair of shoes and a bottle of perfume and a Gucci bag. You're a wife in a house
Okay.
with children,
Okay.
it's much
Okay.
superior, much more honor.
Why do you have a problem with people doing whatever they want?
No,
And
no, no. It's not that. Like, if somebody wants to go get 7 STDs in San Francisco and like hook up behind a McDonald's, okay, do you, right? That you think that's glorious, fine. But my thing
okay,
is, I want people to be married and have stability for kids, right? A mom and dad matter, and have big families
I
and
just don't
happiness.
see why you would think, okay, these people on this extreme end, and that is, by the way, extreme. I'm sorry, but that is an extreme end. These people on this extreme end are not happy, and they live very bad lives, which is why polygamy, the Islamic way of polygamy, will solve the problem. Therefore, polygamy is good, and these people should be involved in a polygamous Islamic relationship. That doesn't make
Polygamy is
sense
going
to
to
me.
keep your man healthy. It's going to keep his sperm count high. He's going to be fit. He's going to have less temptations, and you'll have more relaxation. You know that your man is in the hands of other good women, not out there, you know, getting some disease. You're in a unit around God. You're not. It's totally different. It's a totally different system. I know it's hard to see from other people's angles, but I've been around pimps before, and the way pimps treat women is very different than the way a righteous, masculine Muslim man would treat his wife. It's far superior, especially in the music industry. The groupies, the way the women are treated are awful. They're like, just give them a little bit of crack, give them a little bit of cocaine, and they do whatever they want. They get passed around the whole group. I
Okay, but
mean,
you're again
it's
talking
very
about
awful.
extremes which you have experienced in society, and then offering Islam as a solution to that. The issue is, this is
Yes,
again
marriage is
a
good,
false. This is
AP.
again
Marriage is
this is
good.
again. I agree, it is good. I agree, it's good, and I'm happy in a marriage with my one wife and our children, and I agree with that. It is good. It
Come
is
on, how many women
proven.
would be like, let me be Leonardo DiCaprio's fourth wife. Let me be Brad Pitt's fourth wife. Come on now, you know what I'm talking about. You just have to be handsome enough, and women will totally line up for it. If
Well, just
LeBron
be,
James wanted 4 wives, how many women would go? Tell me about it.
just
Come
well
on.
just because, okay, that's a ridiculous assertion. Just because people want that, just because people have
They
these
would
feelings, that
do
doesn't
it,
mean, that
AP.
doesn't no okay, just because they want that, that doesn't mean this is the ultimate solution to matters. This is not how it necessarily works.
Marriage brings
And
stability and children.
I would say that monogamy is definitely proven to make people
Polygamy is better
happier.
than monogamy, AP.
No, it's not.
I know
and
your
and
wife
and,
is watching. Just don't get upset. I don't want to get you in
and
trouble.
and forcing people into these relationships because you
Ain't no,
complain
you
about their
don't
life.
force people into marriage, AP. Go on. I'm not putting a gun to anybody's head and saying you have to. Marriage
No,
is
no,
voluntary.
I know, but you believe in forcing a system in which people are allowed to establish these relationships, where men are allowed to establish
There's
these dominant
people in
relationships.
secular liberalism. They have wife swapping, swinger parties.
Okay, but they're
They
not
have
forced to.
all
They can do these
brothel
things if they
culture.
wish. They can
Yeah,
do
but
these things
marriage
if they
isn't
wish.
forced either, right? You can
It
put in
is.
your
It is in a
nikah, hey, I
sense.
don't want to have a second wife. You better know who you're marrying then, right? You got to know who you're marrying then, right? If you're gonna
Okay,
say yes,
fine.
I want to
Fine.
marry you. She has to know her husband. If he wants it, he wants it, and if she says I don't want it, he could say, "Sayonara, I'll get someone else who does." And there's a
Okay,
lot of other women who does.
The issue is this is a solution brought in the 7th century in a society where people had this outlook on life. This is not an ideal system. I mean, there is no such thing that
Marriage
this
is an ideal
is
system.
this is how. No, I'm not talking about marriage. We're not talking about marriage at all. We're talking about the idea that we have this system in which only men are allowed to take as many wives or as they wish, up to 4, and nobody can say anything about this. And they are to treat them, and they are allowed to treat them as lower beings and separate them into different homes, and each one of them has to wait their turn. Women are just supposed to be okay with that. They cannot do something similar, and this is supposed to solve all the problems. First off, this is not going to solve any problem. You will not get rid of the sexual desires of men through this. Women will on average not be happier with this. This will not make things better, and this will not solve a big problem which plagues our societies.
So these women, they're at work all day. They got their monogamous relationship, and her guy friend can just easily go on Tinder and go into a Motel 6 and pop one off with some stranger girl, and she'll never know, which is what they're doing, which is what data shows.
Do you
so
think
many people are not getting married, and they're
like
just open relationships. In San Francisco, there's a huge thing of open relationships where they just let their partner cheat. No strings attached, hookup culture. That's the culture of today. So if you say that's worse, because if that's why we have so many abortions. So we can reduce abortions. People can be married. She can have her own house. And a lot of women will like that. It solves a lot. I mean, it's a good, pure system. It's really good. Just be married, be happy, and it's all right.
Do you think a man who has 4 wives will not do those things that you're talking about?
Hopefully not. If he's got the energy, well, dang, he's thoroughbred, I mean...
Well, he will do these things.
I don't know how he can have the time, but... if his blood is that hot, I'm gonna just be like, "Hey, science should study you because you're just going on and on and on."
I mean,
but I think he'd be less than somebody who was monogamous.
I'm not sure about this. I'm not sure about that. Look at this. Look at this. Sahih Muslim 1403a. Jabir reported that the messenger of Allah saw a woman outside, and so he came to his wife Zainab as she was tanning a leather and had intercourse with her. He then went to his companions and told them, "The woman advances and retires in the shape of a devil. So when one of you sees a woman, he should come to his wife, for that will repel what he feels in his heart." So we have Muhammad here, who is the ultimate example of everybody. He has his wife Zainab, who is one of his latter wives. So at this point, he already is in a polygamous relationship with his wives. But he simply
I mean, he still didn't have hot blood, but he didn't go and cheat, right?
Of course. The issue is the polygamy that he has obviously did not solve the actual problem that we are having.
I mean, horniness is not a problem. Blood is not a problem.
He's walking around.
It's about touching other bodies.
Okay, the issue is that is a different matter. You don't need polygamy for that. Okay, so Muhammad saw a woman outside and got so aroused that he had to go to one of his wives to have sex with her, and said, "Women come in the shape of a devil." Okay, let me finish the point. The issue here is a man today who is married to only one wife may also go out and see women and be sexually aroused by that. So they might be in the same situation, right? Muhammad and this guy. So the issue here is not how many wives you are married to. The issue is what you do after that. Now, Muhammad can choose to either go and approach this woman, or he can go to one of his wives. Whereas the man with one wife can also choose to either approach this woman or to go to his single wife. Or Muhammad can choose to go home and go on Tinder or on TikTok or whatever it is, and to look at women dancing around and can find a woman to get laid with. But he doesn't do that. Or the guy today with one wife is also between these choices of not doing that or doing that certain thing. So the issue here is not monogamy and polygamy. The issue here is what you eventually do with your temptations. And polygamy obviously doesn't solve the temptation problem, right?
Well, you're missing the point here. Well, you got it, but you're kind of not. That's not exactly what I mean. I didn't say that you would stop getting horny. I said that basically you're gonna have less stamina to go out and cheat. He went home to his wife, so he did the right thing. He didn't go with another lady. He stayed within the confines of marriage, which is the good thing.
Yeah, I would also go
right?
home to my wife, but that's the issue is whether I have 4 wives or 1 wife, it doesn't really matter.
I don't know. I mean, a lot of men complain, after 25 years of marriage, you start thinking about second wife, you know? I mean, some women even give their husbands the 25th surprise, which is on the 25th anniversary, they get to go sleep with somebody else. There's all these weird type of things going on nowadays
Of course,
that are
of
outside
course,
of Islam, but
but
Islam gives you marriage.
what I'm
So he
getting at is
doesn't get
that
as bored.
But what I'm getting at is that this doesn't solve the problem at all. You will be just as bored with you will be you will. So here's the thing: you will always be bored with what you have after a while if you are meant to be bored by it anyway. Humans are not. Humans will not ever find this ultimate happiness, this ultimate pleasure, this ultimate happy state. They will
Well, it's
always
harder to
have.
get bored with 4 than 1.
It's really not. It's pretty much the same. This is very much similar to people who have very little money are just as happy as people who are extremely rich, because the quantity of the things that you have do not really matter. The fact that you get used to it slowly and accept this as your normal state is what matters. If you have 1 wife, that is not very different to having 4 wives. It will not solve the problem. If you have 4 wives, you will still want more sex. You will still want concubines and this and that.
Concubines are fine. That's all right.
And you will want to have these celestial
Concubines are allowed.
houris and all that. I know, yeah, but here, see, the issue is 4 wives doesn't stop the problem. You will still have the same problems. It will still
But he'll keep it. But most likely he'll be a good man and he won't cheat on his 4 wives.
Most likely, well,
But it's harder for him to rationalize cheating on 4 wives but it's easier to see someone cheating on their 1 wife, which is way more common than a man cheating on 4 wives, right? More men cheat on their wife than on their 4 wives, because there's more monogamy than polygamy.
I would think it's easier for a woman to cheat on his co-wives and his husband than it is for a woman to cheat on the one husband that she is dedicated to. Because in a relationship where she's one of 4 wives, she's merely a lesser being who doesn't have that much attention anyway, so she could choose to simply go out and have sex somewhere else, maybe.
Well, if I was married to Habib, I would never cheat on him. He could have 700 wives and I'd never cheat. So it depends how much you like the guy.
That's disgusting, but I understand. Yeah. So
polygamy is not disgusting. It's a natural good thing for men.
I'm not talking about polygamy. I'm talking about wanting to be with Habib. That's the issue here. But
he is gorgeous. What are you talking about, AP?
I don't know. Yeah.
Come on, AP. Don't be a bigot.
I am.
AP, he is amazing, and you need to understand that.
Okay.
He's a great Muslim man.
This was a nice
So now you need to go get a 2nd, 3rd, 4th wife. That's what you got to do.
I will think about it.
Yes. You get lots of gym exercise. That's what you need.
Yeah, I'm just kidding here. I'm not going to think about it. I just want to make sure that nobody takes that seriously, especially not my wife. I'm not thinking about it.
I don't want to see you doing your next video with a black guy. I don't want to see it.
All right. Gainsborough said in a super chat, please, bro, move on from polygamy. She clearly into it.
He ain't wrong,
Oh, well, okay. Well, to each his own.
I'm part of the polygamy squad. So.
Yeah. Well, I don't. Here, the issue is I don't blame you for being into polygamy and thinking that is the right thing. I just don't think this is a universal solution to issues, But we can talk about that forever. Stop Scamming Man made a super chat and said Muhammad's wives were blatantly furious and miserable with the arrangement. Khadija seemed rather happy. I would agree with that. If you look at the sources on his relationship with Khadija, she was quite devoted, whereas in his relationship with the many wives that he had in his life later, there was constant conflict, including the co-wives conspiring together and him almost divorcing all of them because of their conspiracies and all that. So,
well, I mean, sister-in-laws fight with mother-in-laws. Women really just love fighting. I mean, women are really catty. So, I mean, whenever you get a group of them together, there's going to be somebody ripping someone's feathers out. I mean, HR departments are filled with women complaining.
Okay, so let's go through the super chats. There are many super chats, including many questions I would like to answer. Ultra made a super chat that said G fire block. Thank you. I don't know what that means. Gainsborough made a super chat and said, does she support death penalty for apostasy? Oh, we already kind of went through that. Do you want to say one more word about that, or?
I mean, we kind of went into it so deeply, you know. I mean, the
Yeah.
answer is already there, right? You feel me?
Yeah. MB Khan said, can you ask her about how Prophet Muhammad flew to heaven on a winged horse and if she believes in that?
What's interesting about that is I often wonder about, this may seem niche, but some type of creature, creation, who knows? This world is pretty strange. You have atheists who believe in aliens and UFOs and Anunnaki. I mean, I don't know what kind of creature it was, but this planet is pretty strange. So I don't really have anything to think about that. Just this, if I went back in time and described my PlayStation to, you know, a guy in the cave and that I can be riding around on a digital horse shooting things, he'd probably be like, "What are you talking about?" Reality is pretty odd, you know. So that's how I look at it. I don't know. Reality is so strange.
I mean, the PlayStation would be a rather natural thing compared to something unseen before, like a flying horse that brings you to Jerusalem and then to heaven.
Well, I heard it wasn't exactly a horse, but some type of creature, you know? I mean, imagine if we didn't have as many dinosaur bones, you know? You got dinosaur bones, you got pretty strange things going on. So you never know. That's how I look at it. It's like, whoa, that's trippy. But I can't say either way, you know?
That's a good point. Let's see. Stefan W. said, I wrote to you in 2018 that you are the second most important German-speaking critic of Islam next to Hamid Abdel Samad. Now you are the most important. Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. That was before our show started. I appreciate it, Stefan. Crazy Pit Mom made a super chat, didn't add anything. Thank you. Gainsborough said, Habib is a good friend of Ramazan Kadyrov and Vladimir Putin, who are oppressing and killing Muslims in Russia and Syria. What does she think about that?
Putin is killing Muslims? I never heard that.
I mean, oppression of Muslim people and groups in Russia and Syria, organizations, movements, you know, like, I guess this could be a reference to the Chechen people in Russia or certain other people in Syria. There is a fight where Putin is on the side of the Syrian regime, or was for a long time, and engaged in organizations, engaged in activities of, you know, fighting against the Islamic reformists and so on.
I have no idea about Russian politics.
Okay.
So I can't really. But Habib is a legend. I will never denounce him. Never denounce him.
Okay. Pondering Jew said, ask her about the hadith where Mopus claims the last hour will come before the boy in front of me dies. Clear false prophecy. Oh, we just went through that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I appreciate that, though. Rakshit Sridharan said, Milahan, Hadith, the book of jihad, is a book of masculinity, manners, and military teaches kindness. This is what I call a self goal. Yeah.
I didn't say that the book of jihad was about kindness. I didn't say that.
I'm not sure what exactly you said. I don't want to accept anything here. But yeah, okay, if you didn't say that, that's fine. Ripple Effect said, a lot of deception, even your words testify against you.
Okay.
Angel Eyes said, why all this talk about fighting? I don't know, because that was at the very beginning. We were talking about fighting in Islam.
That's kind of funny.
Ripple Effect made another super chat and said, what does she think about Muhammad and Aisha? We went very lengthily into that. Again, Muhammad and Aisha, I believe you appreciate that we went into that, dear Ripple Effect. Mr. Monster made a super chat and said, why is Islam more true than my other ancestral religions? Norse heathenism, Native American spiritualism, Ashkenazi Judaism, either all are true or not. What would you say?
Jesus, you want me to get into Judaism and what other religion? Like, you got to break all those down and go through, like, the dogmas one by one.
Yeah. That would be
that's
a long
quite a huge, like, you got to make, like, a 4-hour episode just on each one of those.
You know what? I would invite you back here to talk about other things again. I think this was a very interesting conversation.
Definitely. Totally, yeah. We can definitely get into more and more, for sure.
Okay, that's good. BG Svetan said, Milahan, no matter how masculine, violent, people always turn on themselves at the end. Also, I would prefer drinking beer or wine than chopping off heads.
What about? Oh, I can't say that. I was about to say a joke. Like, what about drinking wine as the head was chopped off? But obviously, I can't do
Yeah,
that.
you
That's
can't do
haram.
that. You can't do that.
So I'll just have to put down the wine and visit the Colosseum.
I would also say I would rather drink beer and wine than chop off heads, definitely. Ripple Effect said, even Jesus had Judas. William Quinones said, didn't say anything, made a super sticker. Thank you so much. Stop Scamming Man said, on how Islam helps some people structure their lives much better. Surely any half-decent self-help system with 1.8 billion practitioners could boast the same, especially if it played so much on people's identity, culture, and hopes.
Well, self-help programs work for like the AA programs, the Alcoholic Anonymous programs, Marcus Aurelius's meditations. Sure, you can adopt different isms, right? But for me, it provided me much structure that helps me. So all I can do is say the proof is in the pudding in my own bakery, as they say.
Yeah, I agree with Stop Scamming Man. We talked about that for quite a little while, and I'm sure we can talk about that more. XXWLZXX said, if it is acceptable to kill people for leaving Islam, is it also okay for other religions to kill people for converting to Islam?
No. No. Well, I mean, technically, hold on. Technically, that's kind of like old Templar personality, maybe, right? I mean, maybe there might have been a pope who was like, hey, yeah, because there were some popes in the past, right, in 16th century, when they wanted to go there and fight. So you could argue maybe they have that, but I guess it'll just be a contest of will. So if they want to execute me for being Muslim, I'll execute them for trying to execute me, I guess. Right?
I mean, you did say that if you make a commitment, then you should count on. If you leave it, then you will bear the consequences of it. So you shouldn't be objecting to others applying the same rule to people who convert to Islam, like yourself, right?
Well, but Islam doesn't say I have to execute somebody because they chose Christianity, though, right?
It says for leaving Islam.
But entering versus leaving is different. Leaving is like, okay, but entering, but I mean, people do that already in a way.
I mean, if you leave Islam and become a Christian, if you convert from Islam to Christianity, then you deserve the death penalty according to the Islamic laws.
Yeah, but I wouldn't want them to execute me for becoming a Muslim, like what the communists want to do.
Okay, but you would accept, but you think this is a reasonable thing for Islam to do, but you wouldn't accept this as a reasonable thing for others to do to people who convert to Islam.
No, I wouldn't want someone to kill me for becoming a Muslim. Yes, I know that sounds a bit hypocritical. I know.
Yes, very.
Rules for me and different ones for thee. I understand.
Yeah. Well, at least I acknowledge. I appreciate that you acknowledge that there is a double standard here.
Yeah.
Jörg Asmussen said, question to Milan, Islam has worked for you. Would you endorse a society under Islamic rule for non-believers to follow? Sorry if you have answered this already, came late to the live.
I mean, I haven't really studied enough what Sharia law looks like, right? So I can't really say. That's why, I have to read more, But does he mean like allowing a parallel society? I think that's already incumbent with jizya, with the dhimmi. I mean, Jews and Christians lived around Muslims before, so, right?
Yeah, I mean, if under the Islamic system, if you believe in a religion which has a supposedly divinely revealed book, if you believe in Judaism or Christianity, you are allowed to live in Islamic lands as long as you pay the jizya. You just have lesser rights, fewer rights, cannot practice your religion as freely as Muslims do, and so on. And so you are subject to certain Islamic laws as well.
There you go.
Sid Dave said, does she believe that Alexander the Great, Dhul Qarnayn, was a Muslim even though he was a pagan, bisexual, and an alcoholic?
No, I made a video against that because I don't know who started that. I don't, because Alexander was a boy loving Macedonian. Like, he was a cool warrior. I like studying about him. Without a doubt, he liked Heracles. I mean, Hercules. Without a doubt, he was a polytheist.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, nothing in the historical record shows Alexander the Great as worshiping anything monotheistic. Apollo, Mars, no way. Saturn, no way. I haven't seen any evidence of that at all.
And in the Quran talks about a character called Dhul-Qarnayn, and the issue is the narrative about this character named Dhul-Qarnayn very much corresponds with legends and stories about Alexander the Great, such as him going from one far place to the other place, encountering a tribe or two tribes and building a wall there.
But I mean,
Dhul-Qarnayn meaning the
people
two-horned
wore
one and
hats
Alexander
with
the Great.
horns and stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
people have been conquering each other forever. It really could be anybody.
I mean, the thing is, it's just so much. It just so much agrees with certain legends that were known at the time, and the two-horned one was a famous thing used for Alexander the Great, who is depicted on coins that were circulating in Arabia as somebody who has two horns. It's.
I mean, everybody wore that. I mean, a lot of people. The lion head, the Taurus bull. I mean, the Assyrians, the Akkadians. I mean, it's just super popular to put cool horns on your head.
Okay. I will make a video on that quite soon to analyze the whole comparison between Dhul-Qarnayn and Alexander the Great. I think I would actually appreciate your views on that afterwards. Saz made a super chat and said, I am a 16-year-old girl. I left Islam because I simply don't believe in it. I didn't choose to be born in a Muslim family. Do you think I deserve death for it?
Well, you're 16, I being born into something is, I guess it's quite different. I guess this is something that I've learned a lot. Is there a big difference between born Muslims and reverts? This is something that I think is very different. I don't really know how to deal with it because it's something I've thought about myself.
Mm-hmm.
There is a big difference in the mentality of people who were born Muslim because of their parents and those who chose it because of this strong compulsion.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I said earlier, I'm not going to be the one to carry out the sentence, but am I going to get in the way? Probably not. And that's not going to happen to you today. So it's kind of like me saying, am I going to be a gladiator in the Roman Colosseum? I mean, the Colosseum isn't up anymore, right? I'm not going to be fighting tigers for, senators of Rome. So it's kind of like it's not going to happen, and it's never going to come back because of the United Nations and the European Union. So you're not really going to get it.
Yeah.
So,
Kumar Ankush said she admits joining a cult, gang, mafia. Well,
a cult and a gang those are not synonymous. Are you there? Are you there? Uh-oh. Uh-oh. AP, you there?
Hello. Oh boy, that was bad. Something happened to my browser and now she's gone. I have to invite her back. Oh, there she is. Okay.
What happened? That was weird.
Hey, I just suddenly dropped. I don't know. I was trying to move around in my Firefox and then suddenly hung up and died. I'm sorry about that.
Oh, okay. No worries. But you were at the super chat of the 16-year-old. That was the last one I heard.
I think I was at the cult mafia one or something.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say that a cult and the mafia and a gang, they're not synonymous. A cult is very, very different structured in hierarchy than a gang is to a mafia. And as to a cartel or a triad. That's semantics, I know, but they're not interchangeable.
I understand. Okay. Demand said, or Demand said, I'm trying to hurry up because I'm supposed to have people come here to fix a few things. Not
Okay.
sure if I will be able to go through everything, but I will try to. Demand said, ask her why the Islamic Allah was ignorant about the altar, priesthood, and sacrifice that Yahweh established with Moses. Doesn't that prove Allah is not Yahweh? Not sure how much you are familiar with that, but there is a lot of inconsistency between Islamic scripture and biblical tradition in terms of, Allah appearing to Moses, telling him about his name, making covenant, giving him the 10 Commandments, so many other things, inconsistencies between the biblical story of Abraham, the Islamic story of Abraham, and so on. How much are you familiar with these things?
I'm not really sure about like. So he's upset that that Muslims don't have like a tabernacle. I don't really get what the point is.
Altar, priesthood, and sacrifice that Yahweh established with Moses. I guess
So the
with the
fact that
covenant.
we Muslims don't use that type of like pour the oil on, sprinkle the blood, or that stuff anymore.
Not sure if that is part of the point, but I'm not sure what exactly is being asked, honestly.
I think the simplest way is you would say that a new form of worship has been decreed, the way in which the Prophet, peace be upon him, has ordained. I think you would just say you change the rituals now. I guess that's the way you'd answer it, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I would say that there is a big inconsistency. I'm sure you have seen my debate between me and the Hamza and the others about the Kaaba.
Yeah.
They still didn't give a satisfying answer to the issue, but yeah. Mr. Krabs said, Milahan, the difference between the French revolutionaries executing people is it was wrong and they changed it. Islam is still wrong and unchanged. What do you say?
I mean, revolutionaries will always take a head, so I don't know about that.
Yeah, the issue is we wouldn't justify today what we call as part of the French Revolution. There was the what is called the Reign of Terror, where lots of people in power, lots of religious authorities, and all that were brutally executed and killed and all that. And while the revolution is seen as having brought good things, these things are not praised, and they are considered wrong today based on different reasons.
Only considered wrong if you're on the losing side.
I don't know. I mean, the winning side considers those things wrong as well today.
Then I guess they're kind of still losers then. So you don't condemn your brave ones for getting the work done that you couldn't.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, the revolution was not necessarily dependent on executing all the religious figures that were executed and as part of the revolution. I don't think that was absolutely necessary. So the revolution could have still happened without the terror that ensued from that.
Maybe. Yeah. I mean, getting a few necks in the guillotine kind of, gets the people riled up. They paraded the head of one of the princesses around the city in Paris.
Yeah.
Mm.
XXWLZXX said atheism is the state religion in China. If leaving Islam is treason, then would that mean the Uyghurs in China are traitors to the atheist Chinese Republic?
That's how they see them, right? I mean, that's why Xi Jinping sees them as a threat to his communistic atheistic rule, is that they will submit to God, they won't submit to the state.
I think the Chinese position is less about religion, more about identity. I think to them it is simply that the Uyghur Muslim identity conflicts with the Chinese idea that people are supposed to be uniform, brainwashed by the state ideology and in submission to it. The diversity in large numbers is to them a problem, and they want to get rid of that problem. So, and under that idea, they mistreat and oppress people. Now, if oppression is justified based on, making your own society flourish and, getting rid of the harm.
Joe Biden made excuses for them. Joe Biden literally said they want to unify China, so I don't want my Muslims to be my fellows to be oppressed, but from their Confucian, Mao Zedong philosophy, they feel they're in the right.
Do you think it's justifiable from their perspective?
From their perspective, they're going to justify it. I mean, I'll never agree with them, and they're like, because I don't want my fellow Muslims to be oppressed. But communists, have that type of ideology. So for them, it's definitely
I see.
justified.
I see. Johnny Rowland made a super chat. Abraham Siko said, MPC was reading about. Oh, is it
Who's MPC?
MPC?
Who's that?
Is it supposed to be MSC? And is it no? Is that MPC? Is that you? Because it's Milan Philosopher's Corner. Is that you?
Oh,
Okay,
that's the first time I
MPC,
see somebody put my name like that.
MPC was reading about Moa and 6-year-old Aisha. She cried because she could relate, but yet she made him her prophet. Also, the same thing she accused Westerners of, she was doing the same about Habib. She lusted after him in open video. Question is,
You can't argue with that. I mean, he's right.
he is?
I did cry in the video I did about Aisha, and I have, overly focused on Habib's in kind of a cringe way, right? So I mean, he got me on 2 points there.
Would you say you were very upset about something regarding Muhammad as his child marriage, but then you simply looked past it and went with Islam anyway?
Well, yeah, I think that's what all of us do. Yeah, if we get uncomfortable with it, but we still have to reckon the fact and, press forward.
Okay.
I love Allah. Like, I understand that there's I think some people said that some people are starting to treat the Prophet, peace be upon him, like how the Christians treat Jesus. But I know that you're not supposed to worship the Prophet because he's just a human. But my connection is to Allah. So I just keep thinking there's no God but Allah, and nothing's going to get in the way of that connection just to Allah.
The issue is Islam has treated Muhammad like this from the very beginning. It's nothing new. Muhammad is not a god. He's not a demigod or anything like that. But he is very much treated as a fundamental part of your faith. When you say the Shahada, you acknowledge not only that Allah is the only God, you also acknowledge that Muhammad is his messenger, and you pledge allegiance to him. You are not allowed to question him or to criticize him. The Quran commands you not to question or to criticize him and to obey him fully. So the things that he does, he's infallible very much, especially if it comes to something so big, setting an example for marriage. When you now reject something that Muhammad did and describe it as bad and as evil, then you would be considered, very much an apostate by the standards of many of your fellow Muslims.
I feel like too many people enjoy doing takfir. They want to kick people out of Islam. They really want it. But for me, they can't, their opinions of or whatever, because I'll decide who my daughter marries doesn't mean that I stop believing in Tawheed, like that I stop having the correct aqidah, that I stop worshipping. Like, you see what I'm trying to say? They try to kick people out over everything. Some Muslims online do that. They try to find, I think they're called the Hawarij. I think that's or the Marhalis or something like that. But they try to kick everyone out for any reason all the time. If you don't do this, and I just started realizing, you know what? I just love Allah. I'm going to follow the rules, do what I can, wait till I die, be with my family. That's what I can do.
Do you consider it possible that Muhammad did something evil?
I don't, because, how do you look at it? Like, when Moses brought, change to Fir'aun, he took away Pharaoh's slaves and crumbled the civilization. And some people could see that as something evil because it helped bring down Fir'aun's empire after Moses was an adopted son. So some people might see that from their perspective as evil, but the Banu Israel were let out of Egypt, right? And went on to do what they want to do today. So there's a means that occurs in the sequence of events of human morality, and this issue of her, she was only a bride for what was it, like 6 or 7 years before he passed away. I mean, they were only married. I mean, it kind of, and she never had any children. So it's like, she's not, I don't want my whole, she's not going to be the means of me getting into Jannah, is my point. She teaches me about hadiths. She was a wife. She had no children. Her father was Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, may Allah be pleased with him. But her reality, her existence has nothing to do with me getting into paradise or my descendants either. So I
Okay,
can't.
what about the question? Do you consider it possible that Muhammad did something evil?
They got together. It happened. I can't call it because it's different. Because I wasn't touched by a prophet. I didn't marry a prophet. I didn't live in the desert in that century. It's just I didn't. She had her period, and I mean, I had my period later when I was 12. So it's different. It's just a hard thing to think about because there's so many different angles that I will control my daughter's life how I want, and mothers can control their daughter's life how they want. It's not compulsory, and that's how I'll work around it.
It seems to me
I
that
don't
your morality is subjective.
on this one issue. I mean, we all have subjective morality.
Yeah.
I mean, we all kind of do, right? I mean, I can
Yes.
say I'm objective, but at the end of the day, I don't think I am. I think, yeah, it's subjective. I want to get into paradise. Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her, was great, but what happened to her, that's between her, Allah, and the Prophet, peace be upon him, and her father, right? And her mom, wherever she was. But
Okay, that is very
yeah,
dissatisfying because you are proposing from the very beginning that we should bring a system which forces us to do the right things and forces us not to do the wrong things. But then you can come to a certain case and say, well, there is probably an explanation to that. It probably isn't wrong. And on top of that, we are not supposed to force people to, not do that wrong thing. People should be free to do it. I certainly wouldn't do it. So you are advocating for a system of forcing people to do good or to abstain from bad things, but you also don't. You do label certain things as certainly evil and forbidden, but you also don't selectively because Muhammad did it, or it is something that Muhammad did. There is great inconsistency here.
I mean, with that issue, I think many mothers who are honest and aren't afraid to talk about it, or fathers, they kind of, how do you get around this issue? I mean, especially it's a very difficult topic. I mean, you can't win. You can't win that topic. I
I
can,
think you can. I think you
uh,
can simply by rejecting Muhammad and the thing that he did, and acknowledging that it is not great.
the weird part is though, is that I love what the Prophet brought in terms of his laws. I mean, there's so many things I love about the Prophet. This is what's hard. Because you see so many other things, and then you're like, oh, it's very difficult because you given to love the Prophet and you love that he brought you Islam. So it's very hard to explain.
The issue is, I can look up at a certain person, and I would certainly disagree that Muhammad brought a lot of great things. But that's just me.
Uh-huh.
Granted that he's somebody who did and brought great things. I can look up to a person and say, hey, this person brought great things and wonderful things. I really love him for that. That doesn't mean I can simply overlook terrible things that he also did. The terrible things don't just go away simply because he happens to also bring some good things.
True, but like when Ibrahim was gonna execute his son, I forgave him for that, and there's lessons in that, and I have to love Ibrahim either way. So do Christians. So Allah decrees things that are out of my ability to understand. I have a hard time fixing a tire, let alone understanding why Allah has decreed something for a specific reason within our reality. There's some things I'll never know, and I won't know
Okay.
until the day I die.
Okay.
You know,
We will never get through these super chats.
there's a lot, huh?
There's many people are very curious about your opinions on things. My question is all this seeking after God or just for YouTube views? I personally think I will never be under a spiritual leader who has done filthy things and get backed up by his God.
Wait, what did he say? So he thinks that like I studied just for what?
For YouTube views, or is it about seeking God? That's what the viewer is
That's
curious
kind
about.
of like a very nihilistic thing to say. Like, yeah, people just read books all day just for views when people are more interested in cat videos. That makes sense. Seems kind of odd.
James Start said, I just got sick to my stomach. This is sad. Stefan G said, Jesus Christ, if you love those who love you, what reward will you get? And if you greet only your own people, what are you doing more than others? Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you.
I ain't gonna love my enemy. I'm gonna destroy my enemy. I ain't into that hippie stuff, man. No way. An enemy is an enemy. You push them into the dirt.
That's you.
Love people who persecute you? Wait a minute. That would mean. Hold on, though, AP. That's not fair.
Wait. But do you not know about these words from Jesus in the?
No, I know, but I'm saying you don't want to be executed for being an apostate. You're being people who want to execute are your enemies. You're gonna love them?
In all honesty, I don't agree with the Christian idea entirely, but I have said before that I don't hate the people who wish bad upon me because I know that they think they're doing the right thing. But nevertheless, I am completely opposed to them and will
do not love your enemies. Never love your. You can depends on why that person is an enemy.
Mm-hmm.
How you apply the word enemy is like, okay, someone you just don't agree with them. You're like, you're annoying, right? That's different. But a real enemy. No, you win.
The issue is Islam takes it much further than that. In Islam, I'm sure you're aware of the idea of loving and hating for the sake of Allah. You're supposed to love your fellow Muslims, and you're supposed to hate those disbelievers who reject or who oppose Islam.
But you're also supposed to hope that they are all potential Muslims as well, right?
Yeah, but you're also supposed to hate them in the end, right? So,
Kafirs versus Mu'min.
Yeah. Stefan, XX said, evil can be subjective. There are many Christians and Hindus who think Islam is evil and should be forced to stop practicing.
Well, that's why I'll eat all the cows of the Hindus and we'll be just fine.
Yeah, I mean, okay. Abdul Alam said, enforcement can even make you support evil things as you don't have any choice. For example, you have, You have a act that killing apostate is wrong, but you can't go against it. Yeah, so...
can even make a...
So you have acknowledged that killing apostates is bad, but you can't go against it. Or you acknowledge that a certain thing is bad and you can't go against it because you simply have to believe in it. Right?
Yeah, just like how, like for capital punishment, some people will say, don't do capital punishment in America, it's wrong. And I'll say, no, give it to them. So it's like, some people are queasy with the death penalty, while I am not. So it depends, right?
Yeah. Okay, I just have people arrive here who need to do some work here. I will have to go. I can't get through. I'm not even halfway through the super chat, so and I'm very sorry about that. But we were planning for 2 hours or so, but we are much further than that. Maybe we can do something where we can get into these other questions again. I can note them down, and you can come back here and whatever.
Yeah, note them down. We'll answer them.
Yeah. But for now, I have to go. Thanks, everybody. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Milahan. Is there anything else that you want to add before we go?
Take it easy on me, AP fans. I'm usually sometimes in your chat. Don't go too hard, okay?
Okay.
Be a little kind. Come on.
Okay. I really appreciate that you decided to sit down and have this conversation with me. I mean, of course, we disagree greatly and very harshly on certain matters, but I'm glad that we can at least sit down and talk. So.
Yes, thank you for inviting me on, and I'll get you a second or third wife one day.
Okay. All right.
All right. Thanks, AP. Thanks, everybody.
And
bye-bye.
Stay away from Islam, everyone.